whose ancestral lands are on which we meet today. Acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of Aboriginal people, the country, and pay our respect to elders past and present. We also we extend that respect to all First Nation people. Thank you, Councillor. Item 1 is apologies, of which I have none, but I will note that Councillor Roundtree, yes, you're on Zoom, Councillor, today. You're the only councillor, and Councillor Hill, you've had a minor operation and you've got a pillow. So you can raise that arm or you raise the other arm. It'll be fine. Thank you. Acknowledgements, I have none. But councillors, item 16.2 in your agenda, legal advice is that this item should be withdrawn until further clarity is sought. That will be withdrawn from the agenda, councillors.
16.
2.
Thank you.
Item 2 of this agenda today is the confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 17th of May. Can someone move that way, please? Councillor Qualman, seconder. Councillor Arthur. Is there any discussion that needs to happen around that, councillors? That being that, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Councillor Ling, are you against those minutes?
Correct.
So all councillors but Councillor Ling are against the adoption of the minutes of the 17th of May. He voted against that, but it is carried. The minutes of the special council meeting, including the confidentials held on the 26th of May 2022. Someone move that way, please. Councillor Arthur. Councillor Taylor. Any discussion around them? Being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That is carried unanimously. And councillors, there is the minutes of the special council meeting, including the confidentials held on the 14th of June. I'll move that way, please. Councillor Arthur. Your seconder. Councillor Qualman. Any discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Item 3, adjourned business. We have none. Item 4, the minute action list. Any questions, councillors, regarding the minute action list, please? Councillor Roundtree.
Thank you.
Councillor Bland.
Thank you. Just also noting that sometimes the audio is going quite scratchy. I'm not sure if it's just for me or whether that would be live streamed, but my question is that minute 170/20 still has a review date of September 22, and I felt we had agreed that we would postpone the report into the floating theatre until the new council had been elected. So I was wondering whether that would be updated or not.
Through you, Mayor, there was, I don't think, a complete not agreement, there was no disagreement, but I don't think we actually settled on a date. But if it's probably one of those things that will probably slide into the next council anyway, just given the amount of work. There are some things, remember we settled, and Councillor Taylor, you were away when this happened, and I was conscious that you were the one who started the conversation, that maybe we put our foot in the water and try it with a mobile stage at some point. And so staff have been looking to see whether there might be some synergy with activity around the festivals that come in the beginning of the year, to have a look at whether it will, what is the activity that might then give us some information as to how solid will be picked up. But we haven't landed anywhere yet with that.
I was just through you, Chair, I was going to make a motion for that to happen at the last meeting, and it was decided that a motion wasn't required to have that changed, and that it was an administrative process and it would be done. But I take on board what you're saying, and yeah, happy to take your advice on what to do.
Thank you, Councillor Bland.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mine's in relation to 140/19, which is the potable water to Wellington East. And I'm aware that we've stated July 22. I'm just wondering whether that timeframe is realistic, given the work that needs to be done, or if we've had any further communications. It would be good to get this moving as soon as possible.
So the ball is back with SA Water, who are doing a condition assessment. Our understanding is they have not started that on the pipes yet. So basically we are just waiting.
So we have no timeframe at all.
Dealing with SA Water, councillor.
However, are we
won't have a
chasing
time.
it?
Sorry, we won't have a time frame until we understand the infrastructure under the ground.
This could take a very long time.
SA Water do things at their pace, whether we like it or not.
However, we've got a community sitting at the end of this.
I know that. And this has been running for a very long time, and
I'm aware.
it's been quite annoying.
We've been trying for a very long time.
Very long time.
2016.
Very long time. Anything
The
else,
drought.
councillor Bland?
No, that is all. Thank you.
Anyone else? With that? Just. Okay, I move on. Number 5, questions with notice. The first one is councillor Qualman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Speak to that. Yes, I do. I'm a bit disappointed with the answer. I was hoping to have some sort of facts and figures, because I think it is important that members are made and the community are made aware of increased costs in handling green waste or at our transfer station. And I was hoping for some facts and figures. So I will be speaking to this later on. Again, Mr Mayor, when we get into fees and charges on the budget part of the agenda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next one is councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor. So it came to me from a number of ratepayers, one of whom was in the park at the time when she phoned me to say that there was a rabbit in there. And we just was basically concerned about the obvious droppings that the rabbit might leave, and the young children that were playing. Her concern was that, you know, young kids pick things up and who knows what that could lead to.
Rabbit, a pet rabbit or a...
Pet rabbit. Yeah, it was a pet rabbit. It was a pet rabbit harness with a lead. So not a wild rabbit, a pet rabbit. So, and there's been other reports of cats and small dogs. So it was just to highlight that perhaps people have become a bit lax, or people may not know that there's a dog park a little bit further up, and just to point it out that that animals are not allowed in the children's play area for health and safety. Yes, I mean, most people have got that common sense, but just to improve the signage.
CEO, have you got an answer for this
So through you,
dilemma?
Mayor, it's actually only dogs that aren't allowed in the park. So if you have another animal such as a rabbit on a lead or a cat on a lead, there is no barrier under the legislation for them to be in the park. So it is, so the signs we actually have are fit for purpose and adequate. It is only dogs that aren't allowed in the park.
The only change with the map.
I would have to find out, Mayor. I'll take that on notice. Maybe Miles, the director, knows that.
Through the mayor. This is an ongoing problem in Meningie as well, that we've got a dog park there too, but people still allow their animals out of their caravans or whatever and allow them to defecate on the park. And
In the line park.
hopefully most people are on lead park. Most people will pick up the waste, but some don't. I've observed on a number of occasions. You can't legislate against human nature, unfortunately.
Miles, have you got a...
Through you, Mayor, I've never come across this in 30 odd years of local government.
pet
And
rabbit or
yeah, rabbits, cats in effectively playgrounds. Now there is a bylaw about animals on council land, but you're meant to apply that specifically to an owner and the animal and a specific incident. So I agree that, you know, in general terms, the signage is about dogs. I think we have a look at this. I would like actually the complaints maybe to come to council, so we might actually deal with the individual owner of that animal rather than deal with it in terms of having to put a sign up that might not really be necessary.
Through you, Mayor, I don't think the owner of the animal was actually known. I think it was the ratepayers who noticed that the animal was in the park. I don't think they were recognised as a resident. I think they were recognised as someone passing through.
Okay. Yeah, and that will happen. So maybe then we'll have a look at signage and our ability to deal with this particular incident, which again, you know, I haven't heard of anything like this in 30 years in local government before.
Councillor Roundtree, are you talking about the rabbit or something else, a further question?
No, about the rabbit. I guess if you've got a pet rabbit, you can't really put it in a dog park because the dogs will chase it. So having been a person that had a pet rabbit on a lead once, it is a problem. Where do you take your pet rabbit?
Certainly is a problem, yes.
Same with the kangaroo.
Yeah, exactly. I used to put my kangaroo in the dog park. That's never a good thing either.
Enough, I think, councillors. I move to item 5.2, questions without notice, councillors. Councillor Bland.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I actually have two questions without notice, and I apologise in advance for having not been able to submit these on time. And I also ask that these questions be recorded with leave of council.
The answers.
The councillors,
And the answers.
I think we need to hear the question and the answer first before we get the recorded, councillor. Right,
Well, somebody needs to record it to know that.
I know.
In the meantime, thank you. This actually is a notice, is in relation to a clarification on the last meeting, and is in relation to a clarification on a statement that you, Mr Mayor, made during that meeting in May 22, where you stated that policy is a guide when addressing council during a discussion on community grants. It concerns me that the inference is that policy and guidelines are interchangeable. It's my understanding that policy and guidelines are in fact different. And generally policy must be followed, and in some cases violation of policy incurs penalty, whereas guidelines are a guide and may or may not be followed without penalty. We expect staff to follow policy, do we not? And I guess my question is, we need to be very clear on the difference between policy and guidelines, and we seem to be blurring the line. So I still ask the question, we expect staff to follow policy, do we not?
Your question to me is, do we expect staff to follow policy?
Yes, and do we consider that policy is a guideline? Stated at the last meeting. I find that difficult.
Councillor, once again, you've caught me without the luxury of reviewing my own words. I would have thought that if there's an exception to the policy or it is outside of the policy, it could be brought to council for a decision, which I think is what happened. I think you're referring to two items that were not fully within the policy in relation to community grants.
I'm actually referring to your statement that policy is a guide. Policy is a guide. Which was your statement?
And my statement for this room,
Yes.
yes. But for the staff, the policy does drive the initial position. But if then it's just outside the policy for whatever reason, the council can make a decision.
Yes. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd be happy to give a copy of that.
So I need a motion, you need to move a motion to have that answer.
Well, my motion is that the question and answer be placed in the minutes. I'm happy to
Move
provide.
councillor Bland, is there a seconder? Councillor Lang, that motion, that's question and response. Be recorded in the minutes. Well, the question is, yes, was a verbatim. No, I think it's not. That's why I'm wanting it written down before,
I'm quite happy to give a copy of what I said to Ashley.
just to see what I will be said in the minute.
So through you, Mayor, we will have to view the audio then and translate it from there. Basically, your answer. Unless you want to agree to it now, the words.
No, I'd be happier if we actually had it now before we voted on it, because once again, councillor, it would have been far better as a question on notice. Right now, we'll wait.
Would you like my copy?
Point of clarification, Mayor, is this a situation where it would be you should take it on notice so that you can check things out? As it's a question without notice?
I'm taking it that my response now, not what was at last meeting, is what will be recorded and voted on in a minute.
So the
Thank you.
questions turned into a motion?
No, the question can be recorded as a motion. If councillors vote that way, the question and response be from councillor Blammo recorded in the minutes will be the motion. Can you see that, councillor, on Zoom or not?
No,
Point of
no, I-
clarification, Mr.
Yeah.
Mayor, I actually asked a question to be recorded, and I'm happy for whichever way the council goes on that. I was then asked to put it as a motion. I had not initially put it as a motion.
Through you, Mayor. And is that the question is the question and the answer is the answer as per normal, but then the motion is actually to have the answer recorded verbatim, which is what we not normally do. Have I got that correct?
Correct.
With the question.
through you, Mayor, as long as you're sure that you want to go with this and you don't want to take this on notice until next meeting where you've had a chance to review what you said last time and how you want to answer the question this time. Personally, I think would be a wiser decision.
I'm taking the question, do we expect staff to follow policies and do we expect policies are guidelines? I'm still waiting for the last piece. Mayor advised, it's got mayor advised staff on my screen at this stage and no more. That's where I'm awaiting what will be written in my response. What I would be saying in the broader sense is that this is for the third or fourth time in this year that questions have been put up which could have been questions on notice or motions on notice, and they have not been. I'm probably disappointed that that's a weakness of the process, but I nonetheless will do my best to answer them as we go.
Through you, Mayor, does the opportunity not happen that you can just take it on notice and answer it in full later? But why do you need to do it now? Where's the urgency today, this minute?
So for some time now, this council's been suffering under a adversarial process. And my view is that there is no point in stretching things out for months on end when I believe I can answer things at the time. I'm aware now that the scrutiny decisions, particularly mine, can be replayed and reviewed and nuanced many times. I would have thought the best way is to take it as it was meant at the time, but anyway, I'm awaiting.
Mr. Mayor, may I make a comment to your statement? I do not take this as adversarial. I take this as a point of clarification, as I have said, and I do believe that. I also apologise for the fact that I have two questions. I have been reasonably unwell and did miss the time frame. And to leave these to flail into the future takes away the immediacy of dealing with any of my concerns. So hence, no, I have missed the timeline and I did apologise for that at the beginning.
Is why I'm answering them now. Trying to.
Through you, Mayor, while that is being put up on the screen, this is to do with community grants. We won't be reviewing that for some time yet. The urgency is not urgent, in my opinion, and I would be very careful about what is said and done in light of previous action. So I'll leave it with you, but I would be taking your time with this one and getting it right.
That's fine. I'm leaving that as it is, I think. Thank you. I think
Sorry, Chair, I'd like to amend that if possible to include council members as well. Staff and council members.
that's not the question, councillor. And you're the seconder. So you can't amend the motion because it is the question, the mayor's response are recorded in the minutes.
Okay.
What it is. I'm going to read this out. Councillor Mann referred to a statement by the mayor on the May 2022 ordinary meeting of council in relation to community grants policy and requested clarification between policies and guidelines. Asked whether staff are expected to follow policies. The mayor advised that staff make recommendations based on policies, but that the council can make decisions in the chamber that may vary. I have moved Councillor Bland, seconded Councillor Lang, that Councillor Bland's question and the mayor's response are recorded in the minutes. You're going to close the early councillor?
No, I'm not. I think my opening statement was that I sought clarification on a statement you made as mayor during the last meeting of council in May 2022, where you stated that policy is a guide. Is that currently in there? And I'm finding it particularly difficult to read. From what you read out, it's not.
Councillor, we're not far from letting it lie on the table because the only way to resolve this now will be to go back and listen through the entire tape.
So through you, Mayor, it's Councillor Blaine, the first part of it is sort of more of a statement, so we're just having trouble how we might record that.
I think the point I was making.
Statement is not recorded. Only a motion is recorded.
Councillor Taylor.
Through you, Mayor, thank you very much. The only way to find out what you said is to review what you said. And
I'm happy to
therefore,
leave it as it is.
sorry, but I'm not going to support this anyway. The question is a valid question. However, the only way to review what you said is to go back and review what you said.
So, councillors, I have a motion that just what is written there now, the mayor's response are recorded in the minutes. That's where I'm at.
No.
So, councillor, if anyone else wants to speak to that, and it's not around the question or the answer, this is around whether you want to record in the minutes, I might add. Anyone else wants to speak to it? Councillor Bland, you're going to close.
Closed.
All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Carried. Hang on, I've got the pet rabbit, sorry, just going there. Carried with 6 councillors voting for it, and councillors Lang, Yench, Bland, Hill.
Sorry, Mayor, I voted against that.
Oh, sorry. No. Voted against that. Arthur voted for it. Thank you, Tracy. And myself. And voting against it was councillors Hill, sorry. Taylor, Bowman, and Roundtree. Therefore, the motion is still carried. Your second question, councillor, is?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And again, I ask for consideration that this also be recorded. I have a slight preamble because, as we've already heard today,
Question, not a statement, please.
however, to set the scene, Mr Mayor, I've had a number of council community approach me regarding councillor articles in the May Canalpin Hub newsletter. And they requested that I bring their concerns to council. The first one, there are twofold. The first one is in relation to the first paragraph of the May article, and the article indicates that two sporting clubs, and they were not named, and there were concerns about their names, they were left off, the statement was they were left off the previous round, referring to community grants. The two clubs missed out at that point. Speaking to that, this is my advice to the recipients, to the people who were concerned. The two clubs missed out at that point due not meeting current CDC policy criteria when the grant applications / information was presented to council. Therefore, this article appears to be factually incorrect. I point out that the concern was not with the individual clubs. Could you please advise how council will correct, either yourself or the CEO, the information in the article? That it wasn't left out, it didn't
Councillor,
meet criteria.
once again, I have no opportunity right at the moment to review the article.
I'm asking a question. And the second part,
I would think you would need to let us respond at the next ordinary council
I'm
meeting.
happy to do that, but I will read the second part if that's okay with you, Mr Mayor.
Sorry, I missed what you said, sorry, at the end there.
Pardon?
What was the last thing you said?
Just that.
Yeah.
I'd appreciate reading the second part of
Oh, I'm
this,
sorry, I was unaware of that.
given that I am representing communities. Could you, the other concern voiced was on the appropriateness of councillors using articles to electioneer. Does the council CEO vet the articles, or do you as mayor? And they are direct questions from community. Again, I seek yours and the CEO's guidance on how to answer this question, as I didn't.
Mr Mayor, can I just suggest that you don't accept this motion and the councillor put it in as a notice of motion for next meeting? You do not have to accept the motion.
I would think regardless, three parts to your question, I believe. So I would think we would need to respond at the next meeting to your questions without notice, because it involves probably some interpretation of what I think has been to you and others, some long-running issue around councillors writing in local newsletters.
With due respect, I have no issue with writing newsletters. I do respect community when they ask me the question, and I can't actually answer the last one, but the first one, I do believe that their concerns were that we were outside policy. I'm happy to pass that over.
Going to defer making any decision or comment around that until the next meeting, because there's, I think, three parts to your question.
I'm happy with that.
Questions without notice, councillors, I'm still on them. It appears there's no others. I move on. 6.1, reports by councillors. My report is there, councillors. Any questions? Appears to be none. Any other councillor report? Is councillor Yench? Any questions to councillor Yench? Being none, we move on. 7.1. Councillor Lang has a motion for the Murray Darling Association annual general meeting. So you'll move that the council seek endorsement from the MDA Region 6 for the following motion to be submitted to consideration at the Murray Darling Association National Annual General Meeting. That is that Murray Darling Association requests that the Murray Darling Basin Authority encompass the effects of sea level rise on the lower Murray River Lakes and Coorong in their climate change research for the 2026 Murray-Darling Basin Outlook Report. Is that right, councillor?
That's correct.
That's the motion. You are moving that way?
Correct.
You're a seconder. Councillor Qualman is the seconder. Going to lead debate, councillor. Speak to your motion.
As members may have picked up, I'm very passionate about the possibility of sea level rise, flooding across the low-lying islands and bypassing the barrages, and affecting not only our lower lakes, the Lakes Ward community, but also even further, possibly as far as Blanchetown. It's a serious matter that constantly seems to be overlooked with climate change. And this is something to raise. So Angus Houston, at a recent MDBA meeting, raised the issue of silo, talking about the amount of, or lack of water, reduced amount of water coming down the river system, but failed to recognise lowering river, rising sea level. They don't work together to get the water out of the river. So I think it's something important to raise and make sure that the MDBA and other bodies identify this problem and do something to mitigate it in the near future, at least before 2050.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Coleman is the second. Do you want to speak or reserve?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I concur with Councillor Lang. I think the bottom end regarding sea levels being neglected, and more authorities, more levers we can pull. And I think this is a valid one, and that's why I'm supporting it.
Anyone else wish to speak for or against? Councillor Hill?
Yeah, I'll be
then-
speaking, I'll be voting for this motion, having attended previous Murray-Darling Association conferences and AGMs. Region 6 puts up some very good motions and quite often are successfully voted through to the next level. So it keeps Region 6 on the agenda and makes sure that we issues that are important to this region are on the federal spotlight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor, we're next.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm a bit confused by this motion because it's already in the Murray-Darling Basin Association Basin Plan, Monitoring, Evaluation, Lower Lakes, Independent Science Review. So it's already in there as sea level rise would alter blah, 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 blah. So sea level's already been recognised. And a sea level rise has been recognised, and it also recognises a reduction in river levels. And I just don't think this is I can't see how this motion actually does anything at all on top of what we already know. I would be looking for, this puts our name, which is the council's name, not just Councillor Lang's name. This is the council's name to a motion to get more action. Whether that action, I think we're way beyond research at this stage. We need action, not research. And by saying we want climate change research for the 2026 Murray-Darling Basin Outlook report, quite frankly, we need to do an awful lot more than the research is already there. It's published on their own website. The information is on their website. They recognise the sea level rise, which is in the background information to this motion. They recognise the sea level rise, and they recognise the reasons for reduced flows down the actual river itself. So I'm not going to support this because this is a motion which doesn't actually do anything. We need motions which actually do things for Region 6 and for the Coorong District Council district and the other councils also affected by potential sea rise. So if we're going to put together some strong motions for action, this isn't it.
Okay, Councillor Lamb.
I'm going to support this motion because this council has at different times put up a number of motions and actions, including taking to the Commonwealth Government the discussion around barrages. We seem to have dropped the ball a bit on that lately. And I do believe that we need to start again, whether it is by putting our name to a document like this and getting it out there again. The council actually believes in sea level rise and climate change, and that we are prepared to look after the communities around the lakes and Coorong and the Murray River as it goes further up, and care for the landowners and the people in the area and the environment. And at this point, I think we're lacking. So I'm going to support this.
You and me will have a discussion about whether you think of that another day, councillor. Councillor Yench.
We will.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I also agree with this motion and the tenor of it. I think we have to keep putting our name out there. If this council doesn't keep putting its name and championing the issues that affect a significant number of its ratepayers and residents, we're not doing our job. We need to be this is, and as we all have touched on in this chamber with what we've said, in effect, it is a climate emergency. Sea level aspects are a climate emergency that this council is facing. So I fully support where we're going with this.
Thank you. Anyone else speak for or against? Councillor Lang, you'll close.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Just a point of clarification first, if I may, in regard to Councillor Taylor's comment about the Lakes Review report. That was limited by its terms of reference. It only refers to the lakes and the Coorong. It doesn't extend to saltwater inundation further up the river. And with consideration, there are 4 major pipelines between Blanchetown and Tailem Bend. Ours, Tailem Bend, being the first one that will be affected, which will seriously affect all of the upper southeast if they lose potable water taken from the river at Tailem Bend. So yes, the report is there. I acknowledge that. There are other reports out there, but none of those reports identify the possibility of all those 4 main water supplies, which includes Adelaide, right across to the Yorke Peninsula, all those areas that are reliant on water from the River Murray being affected. I'm not seeking to put my name on this. I believe it is good for the council to have its name on this motion going to the Murray-Darling Association AGM. If the council doesn't choose to put its name and recognise how this will affect our area, then it will just be proposed as a Region 6 motion. The motion will still go ahead. Thank you. Close.
Thank you, councillor. Motion is in front of you, councillors. Councillor Rountree, I presume you can see the motion. Put the motion. All those in favour? All those in favour? I'm looking at councillor Rountree. Are you in favour or are you?
I can't see the motion, sorry. I was
Sorry,
shaking my head.
it is as in the agenda, councillor. It hasn't
Oh,
changed.
sorry, hasn't changed.
Is that all right? I'm taking both for at the moment.
No, I'll hold off for the moment, thanks.
All right. Those against? The motion is carried. Carried with councillors Rountree and Taylor voting against it, and the other 7 councillors for the motion. It is still carried. Thank you. Seven 1-2, councillor Taylor, solar powered bench seating. Council install a suitable solar powered undercover picnic bench be purchased by the Tailem in Progress Association at a mutually agreeable location in Railway Terrace, Tailem Bend. And you would note the comments there from the CEO around potentially the issue of the street scale where this may fit. Councillor Qualman, are you got a question or you're a seconder?
Just want to make a declaration on the vice chair of the Tailem Bend Progress Association.
Wish to stay in the meeting? Vote. Yes.
Question?
I'll go with it. Just perhaps we should get a mover first.
I'll be
You're moving
moving
that
it.
Moving that way, is there a seconder?
I'm happy to second.
You wish to speak at all?
Yes.
First, and then I'll take the question.
Yeah, that's fine. So the Progress Association have been working on this for 2 years, and they want to spend a substantial amount of money which they have in their bank account, which they are not unhappy, but they're worried that having such a large amount of money in their bank account it goes against the rules of the Progress Association itself. So they raise money throughout the year and have done for a number of years. And a couple of the members of the Progress Association did some discovery as to what they might spend the money on for the community. And they came up with the idea of putting in a solar powered bench, which apparently there's a large number of them around at various councils, including one at Karoonda. It has charging points, etc. It's undercover. I just can't see why a council would not support the community who is willing to buy the item for placement in Railway Terrace. Now, I appreciate that the CEO has stated that they've been working with the Progress Association on the approach of upgrading Railway Terrace, etc. However, apart from the last discussion in February, the Progress Association have not received any communications, which is, yes, we do agree to purchasing it and we'll put it in place. And they haven't been told, no, we prefer that you don't spend the money on it either. So they believe, or they feel that they're in some kind of a limbo as to whether or not they can go ahead with contributing this bench to the community, which has the full backing of the Progress Association, and something that they daily want to do as part of a contribution towards for the benefit of everybody that's using Railway Terrace. Now, regarding any future developments along Railway Terrace, such as what the Grand Master Plan eventually becomes, surely a bench could be relocated if necessary. So if the actual position chosen to start with doesn't work in with whatever the actual finished design is, then so be it. It can be moved, the same as the parklets can be moved. And therefore, I have brought this motion because they feel very frustrated that they want to give to the community and feel as though they're not being listened to.
I'm going to take as next the question from Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. Part of my question has been answered by Councillor Taylor's explanation. Yeah, I was just wondering what the solar power was going to be used for. That was just lighting, but charging stations, that's a really good idea. Obviously, if there's any other uses for solar power, then it should be utilised as well. So I commend the Tailem Bend Progress Association on their foresight. I hope an agreeable solution can be found.
Maybe it's my fault that I didn't understand their level of frustration, because all the things, Councillor Taylor, you brought up, we had already talked about. And I understand that they have a large amount of money in their bank that they are keen to spend on the community. It was that, and so when I saw them or talked with them before Christmas probably, and then I know that they've had another meeting after Christmas when I was away. And my understanding, and maybe I was wrong, was that they were happy to wait for that. So if that's a change or I misunderstood, then we're more than happy to work with them quickly to have a look at it. The other thing is that although there is one installed at Karoonda, we know that these things don't have a very long shelf life. And so looking at what's available, they do deteriorate quickly. They're not as robust. They look great when we put them in the beginning, but we have to find one, if we want some longevity with it, one that suits, because they don't have longevity, and the director might have more to say on that. But first of all, I didn't understand, or maybe I misunderstood, that they wanted it to be done quickly. I knew their frustration of not being able to do that. And we certainly can look at it, but it's not about just buying one off the shelf either. It's one that we want to have that makes sure that it is longevity.
Rick, do you wish to add, or no particularly?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Progress Association, like the CEO alluded to, thought it was reasonably clear that this would be part of the Streetscape Master Plan, and the Progress Association would be a stakeholder involved in the consultation process. I have done some investigation into the solar powered street benches, and the consultant that we have engaged to undertake the Streetscape Master Plan has that in their scope of works to investigate, so that we do purchase or implement a fit for purpose suitable asset that will have a reasonable useful life and serve the community for a long period of time, rather than a cheaper version that will require significant upgrade and maintenance. So it is part of the plan, and the amount of money that the Progress Association has in their bank account to put towards this asset will be great, but also only serve for part of what the total capital cost of a reasonable.
Councillor Roundtree's next.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be supporting this motion. One of the things that concerns me when we talk about the streetscape is that it has the ability, the streetscape project, to be the spot where we park some of the more unusual elements of things we want to get done. And I think we have to just be mindful that the streetscape project is going to end up quite large, may cost a lot more money than we anticipated. Now, if we've got this group now ready to go with what they want to do, and it's what the ratepayer or what that group wants, and they've got the money, I think continually perhaps passing things off to be dealt with during the streetscape project is sort of just passing the buck. And that's how I feel about it. And I would like to see that if they've got the money, community wants to do it, let's just go ahead and do it rather than wait. Because this streetscape project, let's be honest, could take 3 more years to get done.
Okay, Councillor Bland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got the impression here that there's a lot of money in progress, maybe not enough an asset that council can then work with in the future and maintain at a cheaper cost from our director. So I'm a little bit confused about how much we're talking about and what sort of quality we will have in the future if we have done that. Now, with that discussion has already been had, I would like to leave this one lay on the table until such times as council itself comes back with some detail. And my other question is, my understanding is around the moving of assets in the long term, it tends to cost more. Now, if it's going to take 2 or 3 years, I understand the problem. But if it's closer than that, so perhaps our director could come back to us with suggested, or back to Progress Association with a suggested type and quality, and then maybe come back to council for it to be placed prior to the streetscape, which still will give us perhaps an opportunity to get this done.
Councillor Ling.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am myself in favour of the idea, have been since 2016 when I first saw them actually at a LGA meeting. They were fantastic, but they did look very tacky, and definitely at the time weren't going to aesthetically fit in with all the other park furniture that the council was putting into its parks. So I would hope if we do go for something like this, it isn't resembling what I saw at the LGA show, but better thought through and fit for purpose.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment The amendment reads that the council write to the Darling Brand Progress Association acknowledging their offer to install a solar powered undercover bench seating arrangement, and will investigate the installation as part of the planning streetscape project for Tailem Bend.
Through you, Mayor, could I have that read again, please?
Yeah, just a minute.
Yep.
So, station part of the streetscape planning project. Solar powered underbench seat.
Charging.
And we'll investigate the installation as part of the,
Not charging.
Be on the bench, Mayor, they can be in.
Speak on the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Yes. Speak to your amendment. It's an
It's an
amendment.
yeah. I think this is a way to go because it's no good having a streetscape underway, which is about to start. I think the contract's been let for it, isn't it? To investigate. So it's not 2 years away. It's a job that will be in progress pretty soon. And one of the other things is, as Councillor Bland has alluded to earlier, is part of our policy is that any grants or things that were given have got to look at the long-term effects for the council for maintenance and whatever. So it really needs investigation. It needs to be part of the streetscape. It's no good plonking it in now and then the streetscape comes along from the wrong place.
Councillor Yench, are you going to be the seconder of that?
Damn straight, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to
I'll take that as a yes.
yes.
Get what you just
And I would
said.
like to speak to it, please.
Do it now.
I totally agree with the amendment. Our roads and infrastructure director has given a clear indication that these things have to be done in the right timeline, and they do. The motion spells it out. We are very grateful to the Progress Association for their kind donation to the community and obviously accept it on behalf of the community, but it has to be done in the appropriate manner. We can't stick it in and then find we need to move it 5 metres at $10,000. These things can be very expensive to shift around and you can damage them. There are also opportunities with this through our director that are not, it may be suitable to be placed in the playground earlier rather than later during this project aspect. And therefore that is an opportunity there to be explored. Thank you.
I'm in the amendment and Councillor Langer indicated.
A question, if I may, to the director. In light that we've just got the new parklets, is there any possibility of actually modifying the parklets to include some solar panels and the USB charging points? I think that's the main point of these picnic tables, is the solar and the charging stations, which could be added to the parklets, I think, quite easily.
Great technical answer around the parklets would be to the CEO.
So through you, Mayor, what we could do, and Councillor Arthur, maybe rather than under the bench, as you've noted, there are many styles. Some of them are from above, some of them are from below. So maybe if we just say, explore the options for suitable solar powered, and then we can look at whether they could be retrofitted into the parklets or not.
Yeah, picnic bench. Yeah.
The Director of Roads and Infrastructure.
Through the Mayor, part of the process or part of the scope of the works that the consultant's been engaged to do is to develop a style guide for the entire district. So that's to come up with a set of standard pieces of furniture, signage and whatnot, so that we can roll it out across the organisation. Each town will have its own little nuance to set it apart from other areas. The part of the process is to develop, a set of standard pieces of furniture that we can roll out. It might mean that we have multiple park benches, solar powered park benches, retrofitting existing infrastructure with solar panels. These days it's low voltage. So it's opportunities to implement all sorts of environmental initiatives as part of the work. I'm all for putting up a solar bench in our towns, just making sure that it goes in the right location at the right time. The master plan will deliver a whole heap of small wins, low-hanging fruit that we can deliver in the short term, so that people can see that we are actually doing stuff across the district. It's not one whole piece of the puzzle; it's many little pieces that we can show the community that we actually are delivering some stuff.
Councillor Roundtree.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's a shame that we're not listening to the Progress Association. I think they've been talking about this for a couple of years now, and we keep not listening. I would wonder whether they could be invited in to perhaps do a presentation on what they're trying to achieve here. I think we're just missing the boat a bit on what they actually want to do. And as Councillor Arthur had said before, when I was talking about 2 years, we've started the investigation into what we want to do now. Then there's got to be the funding component for it. And I know the director has said that we can do smaller things here and there. And I hope that we can do that and that would actually happen, because I think this is one of those projects, if we keep tacking on all the little bits and pieces that people actually want, calling it, oh, when we get the street plan done, we'll consider it. I think this should just be a missed opportunity, and all we're doing is just really upsetting a group of people that have already been at this for a couple of years now to get this underway. And I just think we're just dragging the chain for no real reason. We can over-engineer it to death if we want to, but like here it is, they've got a plan of what they want to do. Why can't we? And they've got the money. Why can't we just do it?
Okay, Councillor Qualman, I think, is indicating, and I note that he says that he's the deputy chair of the organisation. So,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm just holding back here. I just want to make sure I'm doing the right thing here. But I wish to say something if I'm allowed to. Of course, the Vice Chair and I can be prevalent to a lot of information regarding what the Progress Association was doing, and they've had this money in store. They've got quite a bit of money put away, and they are concerned that accumulating and not using it, and it's got to be going into some community asset. And it's been 2 years, and regarding hearing, and it concerns me, the Main Street plan, well, that could be further. Sorry, I haven't seen anything happening yet. And here we have got an organisation willing to pay for what I call, and it's not a cheapo one, it's not a nasty one. The ones at Karoonda are faring quite well. One's 4.5 years old, still going strong. And if it is in the wrong place, it's not that hard. Undo a few bolts and move it. So I just get uncomfortable saying because of my position, but I thought I'd better enlighten you how I felt about it on behalf of the Progress and as a councillor. Thank you.
thank you. Anyone else speaking for or against the amendment? Councillor Taylor.
So I'll speak against it because there's no timeline. It's the same old. Right to the Progress Association acknowledging that offer to install, but there's no timeline on it. So eventually they'll just spend the money somewhere else.
Councillor Bland.
I have a question of the mover and the seconder as to whether they put in a timeline, but B, also that a meeting be auspiced with the director as soon as possible to consider what the options might be. I'd hate to lose it. I think it is an important piece of furniture for the future. I've heard everything everyone has said, but I think communication between council and the Progress, sitting down and going through it, would be the best way to go. If they would consider that in the options between Councillor Arthur and Councillor Hughes. The question was, whether or not the mover and the seconder would modify their motion to include a discussion with the director to assist with this, moving this forward as soon as possible, rather than lose it altogether.
Looking at the movers, I'm looking at the mover first. If he doesn't move, no one moves.
Sorry, you want me to?
You wish to amend that to include a discussion with the director?
Discussion with?
Director around moving it forward as quickly as possible.
Can I just make this comment?
We will close debate very soon.
Part of the street planning will be discussion with community. This is the first time I've heard of this offer from the Tailem Bend Association. How many other elected members here have heard of this? So, you know, like it's come out of the blue. It's a great idea. I agree with it, but you don't make cement without putting everything together. And that's what we do, put it all together and then you've got one plan. Otherwise it's ad hoc building.
Certainly have. Right, I'm going to, just for Councillor Roundtree and the public's benefit, this is an amendment to the motion. Move Councillor Arthur, seconded Councillor Jensch, that council write to the Tailem Bend Progress Association acknowledging their offer to install a solar-powered undercover picnic bench, and investigate the installation of the solar-powered bench seating as part of council's streetscape planning project for Railway Terrace, Tailem Bend. I put the amendment. All those in favour? Those against? The amendment becomes the motion. Councillors, the amendment is carried. Just give me a second.
Mayor, do you have for and against? We've got a couple missing.
That's what I'm trying to get. I'm taking the people that were for the amendment to be Councillors Ling, Jensch, Land, Hill and Arthur. Those against was Councillors Wallman, Roundtree, Taylor and Simmons. The amendment's carried. The amendment becomes the motion. Is there any second amendment? Here I try you. Are you moving a second amendment?
Yeah, I want timescales in there.
We're meeting with consultants on Thursday.
Consultants are arriving here Thursday. You would like some timescales. So, with the concurrence come the motion. Those two is near the motion. The motion, yeah, it's become the motion.
Through you, Mayor, can I make an amended motion?
We can allow a second amendment and we can allow councillors under our operating procedures to take people moving amendments and second amendments that have already spoken to the motion, and since everyone has, that's probably useful today. Councillor Taylor's got the floor. He wishes to put a second amendment, and I think it's around timescales, to that. What is now the motion? I am happy to take it.
And I'm happy to second that motion. I think
You haven't got a motion yet, so just hang on.
Oh, the motion with timescales, we need to have some dates in there. I think that's what Councillor Bland was alluding to before. We need to
How
have.
about, just hang on. How about a second amendment? I'm looking at Councillor Taylor because she still has the floor on this subject.
No, we'll have to some advice.
So council write to Tailem Bend Progress Association within the next 7 days. and something at the end, which is to, it would be a yes or a no within the next 2 weeks, because they need to move on. If they're, you know, if they're not going to hang on to this money. They're very conscious of the fact that they've got a large amount of money in a Progress Association bank account, and I'm not quite sure what the word is,
You
Councillor
would,
Qualman.
you would be looking for with a decision on where within what, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months? What are you aiming for?
A decision on 2 months. They've been at this for 2 years.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. I'm trying to get a second amendment in.
A month.
Can we wait, please?
Councillors, we're just looking at who can actually move the amendment.
I have a question on that then. Is it not that, sorry, that we can do that by council? Although we haven't moved that yet.
Not substantial difference, that's the problem. Needs to be substantial difference, and it's not. Only one aspect.
That's why I tried to make a variation.
No. Give me some time to read. This is council practice.
I thought we just read the policy on all the areas. And everyone's spoken. Although we haven't moved the policy yet.
That last one,
Spoken to it, doesn't it?
the other amendments.
Or the previous amendment.
Just an installation of the.
The shed like the
Just a
minutes.
minute,
It's not.
The amendment becomes a motion. We're going to be here all night.
Get home by midnight.
Council, it appears that Councillor Taylor, you can't move a second amendment with a mover of the original motion, even though the original motion no longer the original. It's now no longer the motion in front of us, sorry, because it is,
Can I move
the amendment has become the motion. I think the decision, the reading of our meeting procedure and guidelines is that I cannot accept your second amendment because you're the mover of the original motion. So, Councillor Rountree, a question?
Can I please move the motion then?
It's not a motion, it's a second amendment.
Can I please move the second amendment?
Who seconded the original motion, please?
Councillor Rountree seconded it.
So I don't think you can, Councillor, under the same rule.
I didn't think my name got up for that one, so apologies.
Anyone else with a second amendment?
Who's left?
Well, no one that wants to. And Councillor Qualman, my short advice is you probably shouldn't. Okay. Unless someone else was a second amendment, the amendment's been on the motion, and whoever moved that amendment gets to speak, which I think is you, Councillor Arthur.
On the first amendment.
It's a motion
I've
now.
already said it. I don't think I have to repeat myself. The
Okay.
motion, the amendment is the motion, and the motion is, as I reiterated before.
Despite all this, councillors, we think the best thing also is to invite the Progress Association into the chamber as soon as possible. Have a discussion around the action we might better take out of this. I note that the motion now doesn't have timeframes on it, and I think that's the issue for some. But that can be seen as a positive and a negative. So councillors, you'll be voting. The council write to the Taylor Men Progress Association acknowledging their offer to install a solar-powered undercover picnic bench and investigate the installation of the solar-powered bench seating as part of council's streetscape planning project for Railway Terrace, Taylor Bend. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. The councillors voting for that motion are councillors Simmons, Arthur, Hill, Bland, Yench and Leng. Those voting against that motion are councillors Qualman, Taylor and Rountree. Carried. Thank you. Councillors, I'm going to have a small break. 5 minutes. 5 minutes from 4:13, please.
Seems reasonable.
You won't get home before midnight.
Oh, wasted time.
Yeah.
Resuming the meeting, please, Ashley.
Oh, here we go. You're sending me a whole pile of stuff that
Motions without notice, councillors. Councillor Roundtree, welcome back. Motions without notice. Is that you, councillor Arthur Durama?
I've got one here, I'll bring it. We'll have. This is great, my writing.
Want me to read it out, please?
Read it out, please.
Actually, staff prepare a forward maintenance schedule for the Meningie Pelican sculpture, including estimated costs for the next 10 years. That's part two. Part one. Part two, the staff also prepare a report on the statue work, the structural work that was done on the Pelican and the sculpt in January 2018. The report to include the work undertaken and the expenditure.
So council, we'll start with, we're going to remove the word staff out of these things. It's for council to do it. So the two parts is
One part is a forward maintenance schedule, and the second part is that was extended in 2018 with look like major works going on there with the framework going up and the hessian around it. Reason, as I agree with what Councillor Bland said last meeting, we've got to know on what's happening to these things in the future. They're an important part of the tourist thing in Meningie. Also, council's got to know what A, if it's got the longevity, and B, how much it's going to cost.
Let's get the CEO to say where we are at with this anyway.
So, through you, Mayor, with the, as you know, we're already looking at the Meningie Park, the Lions Park already, with the replacement of the barbecue facilities there and some refurbishment work, and money has been put aside in the budget for this year that we hope that we can leverage and double with a grant. The part of the preservation of that particular sculpture will be included in that. We have had a conservation plan from the artist involved, and as you know, I think I've mentioned in the chamber that that's 28,000. We are trying to make sure that we can cover off everything that needs to be done. Any public art needs a preservation plan, and that particular piece of sculpture doesn't. If the council thinks that the sculpture is not relevant anymore, or it's no longer desired for it to be there in any way, there are options, because it's not a very difficult piece of sculpture to remove. But if the council is has the desire to keep it there, then it needs a preservation plan. And preservation plan, to get it up to scratch, is about $28,000 at the moment. And then I would have to take on notice how much extra, but every year it needs some maintenance because it's a piece of wood.
And I think that's what we need to know. That's my motion.
Councillor, once again, really prefer the council has due time to consider it. But given what we've just been told, I don't think at least the second part of that motion is particularly onerous, more informative.
So you meant that the preservation plan, and I haven't read it in full, would probably outline what needs to be done year on year out.
So I'll accept the motion. Is there a seconder?
I have a question first, and then I'm happy to second it. And my question is, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CEO, in the discussion on the preservation plan, is consideration being given to taking it down from its location, A, to do any preservation work, and B, situating it into a better space?
My understanding is, and I will make sure that I'll check, but it was to preserve it in situ.
Could I,
we would have to consult with the artist about moving it.
maybe cheaper to take it down and do it and place it out of the weather?
Well, that might be what you come up with.
That's what I'm suggesting we consider. Unless you want to put it in there.
Through you, Mayor, generally you don't move public art without the permission of the artist involved, but it would require us to consult with them in some way.
Who owns the sculptor, us or the artist?
Who owns the sculpture is the question.
So we do, but generally courtesy in this particular instance requires that you do talk to the artist involved.
I believe what we're looking at here is trying to get a plan together that we do and are able to keep it in a pristine condition that it'll be able to stay there. Instead of in 5 years' time, it might have to come down or something like that.
Yeah. Anyone else for or against the motion? There's no councillors wish to speak for or against the motion. Councillor, you'll close. I take Councillor Bland as the seconder and she spoke at some length. Councillor Arthur, you wish to close?
Closed.
No, move Councillor Arthur, second Councillor Bland, that a forward maintenance schedule be prepared for the Menengi Pelican sculpture, including estimated costs for the next 10 years. And a report be prepared on the substantial maintenance work already completed on the Menengi Pelican sculpture in January 18, just to include the works undertaken and the expenditure incurred. Put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Any other motions without notice, please? Okay, we move on. 8.1, adoption of the 2022-23 annual business plan. So that me as the presiding member and mayor, just wait on please, is aware that the Old Dukes High, which my property adjoins, is on the list of works for this 22-23 budget or business plan. Ordinarily, a material conflict of interest would be declared. However, we've considered Local Government General Regulation 8AAA. Material interests do not apply to matters of ordinary business. Includes the adoption of an annual business plan. I might make this point to start, please, around this annual business plan and budget. Fairly responsible and fair budget. But I'm sorry I'm calling it budget, but I like the word budget. I'm from the old days. Second stage rate review is enacted, so the fixed charge is reduced from $250 to $150 as per our previous plan. Very small surplus of $12,000 in this thing. We are trying to catch up on our asset renewal, and that's roads and footpaths. We're resheeting all roads has increased from 40 kilometres to 60 kilometres in this year, and the new footpath strategy is in its first year of its process. We're proposing a responsible rate increase of 3%. That is 3% more revenue to this council than last year's budget. We're aware that some ratepayers will pay more, but some ratepayers probably will pay less if the average is 3%. The rate in the dollar for most categories are the lowest in recent years in this council, and the CPI factor is absorbed. We're well aware that some people believe CPI is now at 5.1, that we could go that way, but we are not. That recognises the cost of living pressures on our ratepayers and electors. Inflation will be closely watched and expected that delays in goods and services will continue to grow, but you can also be assured we'll watch particularly the fuel price. That has some effect obviously on our budget. This budget acknowledges the current economic environment, but also community expectations coming out of COVID in particular. It ensures continued responsible expenditure based on revenue and sustainable financial management, and opportunities for an inclusive council with upcoming elections. Now, I just need to say again for everyone, we'll have no wards from November. And when I hear the word wards in the future, I'm going to be very disappointed. While you're still a ward councillor now, you're still in this room. In November, you will not be a ward councillor, you'll be an area councillor. There'll be 7 councillors in the next council, and the mayor will be elected by all of the community. Councillor Roundtree was indicating something before I started that preamble. It is Councillor Watt.
I'm happy to move that motion, and I have a question.
You're moving recommendation, adoption of the 2022-23 annual business plan. That is, the council formally receive the written submissions in relation to the draft annual business plan and budget pursuant of section 123(6) of the Local Government Act 1999, section 6, the Local Government Financial Management Regulations 2011. Council adopts the 22-23 annual business plan as presented. Is that correct? You're moving that way?
Yes, I am.
I'll just get a seconder first, please. Councillor Taylor, are you indicating you'll second that?
Yep.
Thank you. Councillor, you've got a question, Councillor Roundtree?
Yes, I just noticed that council have said they'd provide an in-depth response to the people that wrote in submissions. Is there a date when that would occur by?
Through you, Mayor, it's as soon as practical after the adoption of the budget today. So I will say by early next week. We've already drafted the response to most of them.
Okay, and my other point was that on page 13, when we look at the relocation of the library to the hub, it's great that we're not losing the library, but it has come about as a result of the local school being put into recess. So that was sort of a sad thing that's happened, which was negative for the community. But then the positive side is that we didn't lose the library and the hub can take it. I'm wondering whether it might look more sensitive to perhaps put in the revamping of the Canalpin toilets as a positive for the community rather than that. And people have mixed feelings about it. They're glad that it's there, also sad that the school is in recess.
You're asking for a difference in the way we word things afterwards. Is that what I'm reading?
Well, I'm happy to just take it as it is. I just think maybe it's something we need to be mindful of when we're promoting some things. I'm not married to the concept that we need to change it. I just think it was raised as a sad and a good thing.
Certainly. We'll try and word that up. Councillor Bland, you speaking for or against? Question.
I just have a question, and that is around in your preamble. You spoke about basically CPI, cost of living, etc., and with fuel charges potentially going up, we have a very tight budget to deliver on, and as we haven't increased our rates, so I'm just wondering whether we are clear that we may not be able to deliver in this financial year everything that we have listed, given the potential costs going up.
Councillor, we don't always deliver everything every year that we say.
I
Now we
agree.
carry forward items that haven't been delivered, as you'd be aware, not re-established, they're carried forward. So anything that's not completed by 30th of June will be carried forward. So yes, there is a big task in front of us.
Correct, and I'm just making that clear that I believe that this is particularly hard, and we've held the line, and that is fine. Except it may be one of the harder years we've got.
Every year's hard. I've worked out.
No more grants this year.
As you know, various things have dragged through from native vegetation's clearance on the ceiling of 7 Mile Road to planning approval processes in relation to the skate park. Good weather, bad weather, dry weather, wet weather. Fair to say we're aware that the costs of sealing roads is blowing out enormously now. And so from a straight control of cost basis, going back to just some resheeting this year will probably help contain those costs at this stage. Delivery of many projects, including, I think it's nearly $8.5 million in the term of this council, projects that we've had, council has had some discretion in where they're spent, has been, combined with COVID and supply issues and labour issues. So to have achieved, and this is why at this point I'd thank the staff very much for going on and achieving and delivering things in an environment where not everyone understands the delays that we face. For those of us that are in business, we do understand that, because it is hard to achieve anything in the current environment. So do I believe we can achieve it? Yes. Am I realistic to know that there'll be delays? Yes.
I was asking, just making the statement that it will be a hard year for staff and for council to be able to deliver, and no more than that. And I just think it's realistic.
Councillor Jentsch, sorry, we should have been debating.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I concur with a lot of what's been said. I believe that I will be voting for this. Council has made remarkable gains, but we've had some remarkable grants too. I am concerned, like everyone in this chamber, that we're doing a 3% basically CPI The talk is that it's going to be 7 by Christmas. It may not be, but it may be more. The incoming council will have to deal with some very tough decisions. And I think we're handing the incoming council a fairly clear plan, which they, as they need, will be able to trim. Thank you.
Councillor Foreman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Whilst I don't like any rate increase, but we've got to have a rate increase in line with CPI, but I just hope that 3% is going to be enough for our ABB projection, you know, because if we dip underneath the graph of the 10-year projection that next year we've got to go 5 or 6%, people are going to get a rude shock. So that's my concern, that we can still make progress at only 3%, and maybe we should have gone 4.5 and then 4.5 next year. But just something I had concern with. Thank you.
Great.
Anyone else wish to speak around the business plan? Councillor Arthur.
Yeah, I just got a couple of queries regarding the way that it's been presented. On page 24 of the report, financial statements has got income rates, $11 million. Now, the rates aren't $11 million, they're only $8 million. So we've put all the charges and all that and bundled it all up. I think the ratepayers need to have that separated so they know what they're actually paying in rates as per sheet 16, no, sheet 10, which shows the graph and the pie of the rates, how to split up the rates. So I just think that really needs tidying up.
Page 18 of the business plan. Rates for revenue.
Got page 24 on the bottom of this.
Oh, 24, is it?
Yeah.
Right. But it's also mentioned on page 18.
Yeah,
Rates
financial statements.
Rates revenue.
Yeah, it's got rates, $11 million and $2,000.
It's for you, Mayor. That's how it's been presented most years. That's how it's presented most years, councillor. And then you've got the budget statement that supports it, which is another part of your budget papers. It breaks it up accordingly.
I compared it against 2020. It wasn't presented like that. But anyway, besides that, I do think that should be the ratepayers know. The other thing that I'm very worried about is that it seems that the rural ratepayers are increasingly paying more of the pie. They've gone up now, it's over 75% of the pie of the income is being paid by the rural ratepayer. Maybe it is time that we did like other councils and set a rate, their system where there's a maximum of the income.
The CEO just want to address this.
Through you, Mayor. In the budget booklet that also is part of your papers later on in the agenda, it shows that the rate in the dollar for each of the categories has pretty well held the same as previous years. In fact, the rate in the dollar for all categories is probably the lowest it's been over the last 5 years. So the rate in the dollar and the comparison against each of the categories has held pretty firm from last year.
Just address that percentage of total rate revenue raised by primary industries. It's in a graph somewhere in the agenda. I believe
Yep.
we're looking for it. Does that include the fixed charges discussion or not?
So on page 10 of the budget booklet,
That's what I got.
yes. So that's held pretty firm. It's pretty much the same as last year, councillor.
70.56%. Last year it was 68%. The year before it was 65.3%. So over the last 2 years, the burden has been carried by the ratepayers and by the rural, and we just need to have a good look at that for next year's budget. The other thing I would like to ask is on page 11 of that, we've got the and the curbside weight collection. That is compulsory, and the en route collection, I take it.
Are you asking whether the en route's included in that
Yeah.
budget line of what is defined in the defined area.
50,000 estimated this year?
I'm just going to check. Leanne is nodding. Thank you. Thank you, Leanne.
It is? Right, what about the extras? What about the people who pay for extra bins? Where is that included?
That's all in, it's all encompassing, councillor. It's
Well, how
rolled
can it
up to
be
the
you
top
don't know
level.
until the start of the year?
Pardon?
You don't know who's going to want the extra
No,
bin.
but you would base it on this year's.
And the other thing is also regarding fees and charges and revenue. To me, that you've got the swimming pool is going to bring in $200 next year.
What page are you on?
Page 12, the same thing.
Out of the budget or the business
No.
plan?
It's a different agenda item.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Users fee, under users fee.
He's jumped ahead.
Do you want to talk about it now?
No, you talk. I don't know what
No,
it is.
no, it's not this agenda item.
This is a fee and charge item, councillor, that's in the budget.
User fees.
This is not,
Last year it was $6,500. This year it's 200.
That's to come.
There must be a reason. There's also, you've got leases, including airfield cemeteries and others.
I'm going to get the director to actually answer this one.
I'm confused. Sorry, councillor, what you're talking about.
So I think you're referring to the numbers in the booklet. And so I'll try to do the explanation as best I can. So the booklet our numbers are based on primarily expenditure. But however, current expenditure is a combination of the Civica and the Synergy.
No, this is
software.
revenue.
Number, whether it's revenue or expenditure, the same principles apply here. So in putting together, we've had to bring in information from both Civica and Synergy Soft. When that happens, we don't get exact matching in terms of coding. And that's why you'll see some figures that don't appear to make sense, such as the one you just showed us. But what the figure you need to look at is the bottom line. You'll see the bottom line figures are all consistent in terms of the current expenditure and what we're predicting. So again, this, when you see it in the booklet, you will, that will be primarily because of this issue of obtaining information from Civica and trying to match it in Synergy Soft. It's almost like two different languages coming together and they don't sync perfectly.
The naming conventions in each are different. So if, as Mould said, the bottom line is for that particular one, 155,000 in revenue versus 163 for this year. If you look at the individual ones, some of them have moved around quite substantially, and it's because the naming convention in both of the systems is different. So we really have focused on the bottom line rather than each of those individual
So
categories.
that will be adjusted over a period of time.
It will be tidied up over the period of time.
Because another one that stands out is the halls.
Correct.
If we
Same.
increase the income from the halls, yet we're giving it to community benefits and that for nothing, where they used to pay.
To the mayor,
So that actually would be reduced there.
You don't assume that, councillor, that for nothing. It's just the changes in the terminology in one system is different. And so matching that was very difficult. So it's the bottom line that's the important one, because if you go line by line, you'll see some of them have shifted around quite a little bit because of that naming convention.
and just,
Last one,
okay.
page 13. These sort of jumped out at me because there was that meeting last Wednesday, is the library operating grants, and this is what we were talking about these actually, and it seems strange that they've gone down a considerable amount.
They're based on population,
One's
councillor.
gone up tail and bend, and the others have all gone down considerably except for Tinty. Now that is a figure that is given to us by the Libraries Board or the Education Department on how much the libraries worth, how much the council have to pay. So that shouldn't be a guess, that should be an actual.
Yes, and it's based on populations. So if there's been a movement in populations, and because they're very small numbers, the percentages look quite alarmingly large. But in terms of materiality, if you're talking about, say, I don't know, Kumadook, 300 to 522, they're very tiny numbers, they're only hundreds of dollars, they're not material.
Yeah, but you know, like you talk about population, you know, Meningi's gone down from 3,400 to 400. But, you know, that just stuck out at me, you know?
Sure, it'll come
Okay.
back.
That's all, thank you.
Councillor Ling,
Sorry,
you had your hand up
yeah, I did,
a
because
long time ago.
I was wondering where councillor Arthur was quoting. I think he got off track because we're really, the motion is just to accept the ADP.
That's what we're
The
talking about.
budget is another part of the meeting.
Okay, councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Mayor. So I think it's a good reflection of where we are as a council. The 3% is about the maximum that this district can afford. I think it's all well and good looking at it was good that you mentioned the external pressures that the ratepayers have and are likely to have even more pressures going forward, depending on what happens with interest rates, etc. I would also reflect that the increased valuations are indeed what is driving the increases in primary production. We've got a number of Canadian super firms as an example who are buying the big and keeping those valuations artificially high because they're willing to offer more than the perhaps valuation is on the land. How long that's going to continue will also influence the overall value of properties within the district. So I think it is prudent and good to reflect on that, which you've done as Mayor. This council needs to live within its means rather than to go well above what it could charge for its rates. We're still in a position where we need to encourage people to move to the district and to purchase properties or to build or to improve the overall rates footprint that the council and district has. So we have to be mindful of that moving forward into future years. I think this is an excellent outcome. I'm sure it will have its people who see it as a negative. It's always going to be hard when the valuations push the rate for primary production. Primary production is always sort of shown around about 68%. And yes, it's increasing, but how much of that is driven by valuations? But I think it's a really good document. It reads well, and I thank everyone, including all of the staff, for putting together yet again another superb document.
Thank you. Anyone else in the debate? Councillor Roundtree, you'll be the closer.
Thank you, Mayor. I think Councillor Taylor has summed up everything I was going to say, so I'll close debate.
Thank you. And just before I put the vote, I would thank again staff, and I see Bill's in the back, relatively new in the business, and it's no small achievement to put a budget together in local government. And so thank you to all the staff involved in this endeavour. Motion is as the recommendation, councillors. I put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor, before you go on, the sound is still quite raspy.
Yes,
And,
councillors, sorry, and to people on YouTube, unfortunately, we have a technical issue which we cannot resolve.
Okay, thank you.
We've tried in the first hour or two to resolve, and it is scratchy, I'm told. Sorry. Move to 9.1 Code of Practice for Proceedings of Council and Committee Meetings.
I'll move that way.
Councillor, I presume that was Councillor Arthur, I heard. Is that right? Councillor Bland, are you a seconder?
I am.
Made good reading.
No good reading.
Almost
Councillor Roundtree, you wish to speak?
I just have a question. So, well, actually a point of clarification, if I could. So where it says reports are required to include the member's method of attendance, whether in person or electronically, are we now supposed to write that we've attended in person on those reports? Or is it just assumed if we just leave it blank that we attended in person, or do we have to write those words?
The governance officer will give a response.
Councillors can advise me how they intend to record how they've attended, that would be good. If you make it clear for each one, then that's probably best practice.
So councillors, go on, sorry, councillor Roundtree.
Well, just confirming then, so if we're like today's meeting, it would say ordinary council meeting in person in brackets or something like that?
You could just state the location, so you've attended at Tailem Bend, so.
Okay, all right, so like we've done before then.
Location would be good if it was important later to track down who went where and who was claiming what.
So, so just to confirm, it remains as how we currently do it. We just put in brackets or whatever, Tailem Bend, and we don't have to write in person.
I think you're there, you're there. I don't think you're in.
Right, thank you, thank you.
What I would just say at this moment, of course, this is the last meeting of council that you can Zoom in or electronically attend for the ordinary or special council meetings. As of midnight tonight, that regulation no longer allows that. But for the purpose of workshops, committee meetings, there will still be available the options potentially of electronic attendance. Councillor Taylor.
Through you, Mayor. So I was just going to ask that question regarding the attendance by electronic means. So you're still intending, CEO, still intending to offer Zoom for workshops?
It may vary, but I expect, Mayor, you better answer this, but the expectation is that people are in the chamber. But it's the actual change in the regulation still allows virtual for workshops.
So
The only change in the regulation that is stipulated is you must attend this chamber or the chamber to the ordinary monthly meetings or special council meetings.
Yep. So are we also returning to 6 p.m.?
No, that has not been discussed in a broader sense yet, actually.
So that was put in under the emergency.
I had a brief discussion with the CEO around this only further discussion. 6 p.m. and then for a while, I think we were at 5 p.m. So we will be reviewing that.
So that was a motion of council early on. Would that be down to the new council to change that time?
Be down to that's the discussion we need to have and put back to you, I think.
You want me to bring a report to council?
So perhaps the CEO may bring a brief report to council around that. Because our original position was 6 o'clock, and then I think for a little while we went to 5 o'clock. Can't remember the circumstance around that. And then since COVID, we've been, I believe, at 3 o'clock.
Two.
So your question is valid. The answer's not known just yet. The CEO will bring a short report to you. Councillor Arthur and Councillor Bland have moved and seconded this few changes. Is there anyone else?
Could I just speak to it now?
Certainly.
Firstly, I think it's good that we're going back to chambers. I think it's time. It'll certainly make life a lot easier, I think, generally, to network and to perhaps move forward on a lot of things. I would also like to say thank you to the staff for reviewing this and having a look at it and getting this out now in a timely fashion. I do have a concern, and I think Zoom has worked for a number of people, particularly if they are perhaps travelling a long reasonable distance and maybe not be 100%, but certainly able to sit in on a meeting and contribute. So it is a shame that we've taken it away. We have to take it away completely. I know, I understand that, but perhaps if there's ever opportunity to discuss it again, that with leave of the mayor, that maybe still able to happen in special circumstances.
Councillor?
I'm happy with that. I'm just saying that whether an opportunity to make adjustments later on with
I
local
would
government.
think that the LGA will probably do a review,
Yeah, at that
I
point.
think, of this process. Now, it's been discussed at other forums with many mayors around the pluses and minuses of electronic attendance a meeting or split meetings in effect. It's been quite challenging.
I'm more than happy that we're all back in chamber, but I do think there's the odd circumstance that would suit the odd individual with leave.
I think that was my discussion. Because it would be, there's quite a change from standard local government procedure to not be in the chamber. So
Thank
been an
you.
interesting 2 years and 4 or 5 months. Anyone else wish to speak for or against that motion? Okay, closing, councillor, thank you. I put motion as is the recommendation. All those in favour? Those are councillor Roundtree, you're in favour? Your audio is pretty ordinary or deferred, I reckon.
Sorry, it's
Yep.
a bit laggy. I am in favour.
Yeah. No, it's carried unanimously. Thank you. Number 2, 9.2, Code of Practice for Access to Meetings of Council and Committees and Council Documents. Someone wishing to move that way, councillor Roundtree. Seconder, councillor Lang. Roundtree, you wish to speak to it at all?
No, I'm happy with it as it is.
Councillor Lang,
Likewise.
happy. Is there anyone else wish to speak for or against?
Fine.
Close, councillor.
Sorry, closed.
Thank you. But it is as the recommendation. All those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Number 3, Community Engagement Policy Review. I find it. Someone move, councillor Taylor and Qualman, are you the mover and seconder? Josh, you want to speak? Anyone else wish to speak to councillor Roundtree?
Yep. So what's missing from my perspective on roles and responsibilities is comments around finding the right time to consult with the community and work with the community. Sometimes I think, look, I like what we've listed there as the things that we're going to do. We're a predominant farming community, and it's not written anywhere that we would take into consideration some of the seasonal attributes of our region when trying to consult with the community. And I just think maybe some words in there around how we will take into consideration those things might be useful, because it has been a criticism of the past that, you know, people can't get there because of seasonal work. And I know everyone's got different seasonal work. My seasonal work is very different to other farmers' seasonal work. And I wonder whether we should also look at whether we should use things like SurveyMonkey or stuff like that to get people's opinions on different things that we're trying to circulate and get community comment for. Add that to the mix. Sorry, add that to the mix of things that we can do to really get out there and let people be heard. So that, yeah, they're my 2 points. I just would like to see more clarification around consideration for seasonal work.
Through you, Matt. Thank you, councillor Roundtree. Just a couple of comments around this. This is a document to just, again, lift the emergency powers and make the changes back to what was before. We are expecting under the local government reforms to have a template and a much broader set of community engagement activity that will flow through with the reforms over the next 6 months. I suspect it'll come in with the new council. And just last, in regards to SurveyMonkey, we do use that facility now for many things. So, but we didn't change anything else in the existing document apart from the lifting and the change back to the processes of the council pre-COVID.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Taylor, you'll close.
Close.
Put the motion as it reads. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Agenda item 10.1, the Pangarinda Botanic Garden Committee minutes of the meeting held the 4th of May. Councillor Yench and Ling. Moving that. Any discussion? Councillor Taylor.
Question, do we know how many of the committee are actually volunteers? And what are not expecting the committee to do any of the recruitment themselves, but what sort of plans the council putting in place to help increase the number of volunteers?
Through you, Mayor, in this year's budget, there is some money put aside to look at both the short-term and the long-term functioning of the Botanic Gardens at Pangarinda. We are very conscious that the volunteers there are ageing, and they themselves will tell you that they probably won't be around too much longer to do that work, which is very physical. Sam Blythe from the LAP program works quite intensively with them, but we have to find a way, because it's a council asset, council has to have direct responsibility of looking after that particular garden. So we work with them from a volunteer perspective, but also have to, I think, over the next year or two, bite the bullet and realise that it will be paid staff there if we can't find any more volunteers. Does that answer your question, councillor?
Yes, it does. I think I alluded to it a few months ago that while I was travelling the Murray itself, I met a number of people who were not just aware of Pangarinda, but had been there and found it to be an extraordinary resource. And so it's something that I would imagine that it is included or would be included in the growth strategy, most certainly. But it does concern me that time is passing and the people involved are not getting any younger.
The director and the infrastructure and roads staff are taking a much more active role there. But again, that's a resourcing issue, so we have to figure out what that looks like in terms of, because it is a council asset, and as you say, probably more popular than most people realise.
Has council undertaken any advertising to recruit volunteers?
I take that on notice, council. I don't know. I know that they use school children and they use ag students from Adelaide, so there are a variety of people who come already.
Anyone else? Closing, councillor.
Closed.
The motion, all those in favour? Those against, that's carried unanimously. Number 2, the Tindanara War Memorial Hall Committee minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of May. Councillor Taylor. Councillor Arthur. Any discussion?
Know what's happened regarding the recommendation for the elevated dance group?
Be waiver.
Yes, no. Through you, Mayor, I have to take that on notice. We did discuss it, but I don't know what the outcome was of it. I'm just looking at the director to see if he was in that. We'll get back to you, councillor. I think there was some discussion about whether they're actually a not-for-profit or just a loose collection of people who enjoy dancing. So hang on. Sorry, councillor, don't hang on. Just hold. We're just processing the fee request now.
It is a lady who runs the show.
We just have to be careful they're not commercial. You have to be careful they're not commercial.
Well, there is a fee for them to pay, but it's a very small fee for what they get. And she travels a fair way to get there to do it. So thank you. I will follow up.
I'll be interested in what the word elevated means. Okay. I'm going to put that motion. All those in favour? Those against, that's carried unanimously. Number 3, the Coorong District Local Action Plan Committee minutes of the meeting held on the 4th of April. Councillor Arthur. Who's the seconder, please? Councillor Ling. Discussion. Being none. Put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Number 4, Canalpin Community Hall Committee minutes of the meeting held on the 7th of March. Someone want to move that way, please. Councillors Hill and Qualman. Any questions?
I have one.
Councillor Bland, are you saying you have a question?
Yes. And the Rangewood issue, I think it was the Rangewood,
Ventilation out of the rain should.
was that a new piece of equipment?
Yes, it was. but-
It was part of the refurbishment and because these minutes are now quite old, all those, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Director, have all been finalised.
That would have been at no cost given it was,
Yeah, there was a couple of things we went backwards and forwards with the,
thank you.
Councillor Roundtree, question or?
Yes, question, thank you, Mayor. Still concerned about some items being placed under the guise of streetscape projects. For instance, that sign that they want replaced, they've been wanting that sign replaced for a while now, but it's now become part of this streetscape project again, this sort of black hole of where all lots of little things are going to get parked. Can this sort of is this one of those things that we can just get on with dealing with?
Councillors, I'm just going to pull you up. We don't want to go on referring to 3 town streetscapes as black holes or this is or that or deferments. It's quite disheartening to hear that processes we've put in place to try and improve town, talk about methods of deferment or that. I would have said earlier, the difficulties we've had through COVID. And any one of us that's in business knows they are ongoing and perhaps more severe in the last 6 months. If we could please restrain our language around anything disparaging around processes we've put in place to try and improve our streetscapes. So saying that, Councillor, the sign at the hall has been a long-running issue. I don't disagree with you. Go on.
My apologies, Mayor. I don't mean to disparage council. I'm just concerned when I see items that have been on the agenda for a while now be put in this particular spot. And I feel for the groups, the small groups that want to achieve relatively minor improvements to their areas that are concerned that they may be going to have to wait a long time to get something up and running or change that is relatively small and could be considered an easy thing to achieve. So, but I don't mean any negativity towards the council. I love the
comments meant
project.
for all of us, Councillor.
Yeah, well, I was speaking when you said it, so I'm just apologising for
that's
that's the
right.
way it was taken. Not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to look out for these small groups that would like to get something to happen.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
No one else wishes to speak for or against or question? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Number 11.1, appointment of council members to the Coorong Assessment Panel. We need a 2/3 majority. Honestly, is that from memory?
in the voting box.
Hang on.
It's not a Section 41 committee? No. No, so it's not treated in the same fashion as a Section 41. Call for nominations.
Call for nominations. Councillors, a recommendation there, and councillors Qualman and Hill has been the deputy member. Councillor Taylor, you moving something, please.
As long as the members are satisfied with their positions, I'd like to nominate Councillor Coleman and Councillor Hill.
I suppose. Are the members satisfied with their positions? That one's sort of happy. Is this one happy?
No, with all due respect, and thank you, Councillor Taylor, for nominating me to stay on the committee. My workload has increased with my business and I will respectfully decline. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Hill, though, for that. Yeah. Is there another person, deputy, is a deputy council member? And this is for the balance of the term of this council in effect. Councillor Yench.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Ling.
Decline.
Councillor Yench nominated Councillor Ling, who declined. I'm just a bit of, going to take this as a motion once we get there. Councillor Roundtree.
I would like to nominate Councillor Taylor.
So Councillor Roundtree nominates Councillor Taylor and she declines.
Too busy, sorry.
Councillor Bland is going to nominate herself with any luck.
Okay.
Sold. I bid.
Councillor Bland, take what you're saying, Councillor. Councillor Bland offered herself as the deputy council member.
Wording, thank you.
Volunteered Tangerine. Is there any other people want to nominate themselves or otherwise? Councillor Roundtree.
I was going to second the motion then, now that we have the two positions filled.
So Councillor Taylor moved and Councillor Roundtree seconded that this pursuant of Section 83 of the Planning Development Infrastructure Act, Council appoints the following council members to the Coorong Assessment Panel for a period of 2 years from the 31st of July 2022. You'll be around a long time, Councillor. And there will be Councillors Qualman as councillors, as a council member, and Councillor Bland as a deputy council member. And the voting box apparently we don't need. Everyone clear on that?
I have a question in relation to, is there required training now in the election?
Through the chair, yes, there's required training and we'll ensure that that is provided. I will make that, I will note though as well that if you're not re-elected to council after November, you automatically lose this position.
Yeah, I'm just thinking.
Okay, I put the motion. All those in favour? Those against, that's carried unanimously. Item 2, review of LGA policy manual on climate change. Miles, can you give us a brief oversight of where this has ended up after the workshop, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So what has happened is that we have taken the feedback from the session we had last week and we've incorporated that, I believe, in the recommendation. So really what we're talking about here is I heard council expressing concern about the policy statement as it stood. And those concerns are around the lack of clarity and potential impacts for regional councils and communities, the lack of acknowledgement of the regional differences and potential non-alignment with the National Farmers Federation climate change position. And what I read as well was that there was concern that the emergency declaration by local government sector was viewed as less relevant compared to definitive action. So really, I think it's over to the members now to for any further consideration and the decision. Again, this is voting on the LGA's proposed position, not council's position.
LGA board will consider submissions
Correct.
and make their position, I suppose, from that.
So they will put the position to the AGM. I think that's October. But this feedback that's given now over through this process will I'm sure, guide them on the appropriate wording.
Start with Councillor Roundtree had her hand up first.
Thank you, Mayor. So a couple of,
Just hang on, sorry. Councillor, are you prepared to move the recommendation or not? Councillor Roundtree?
Me?
Yes.
not at the moment, no.
Perhaps I'll just wait for a mover and seconder on,
I'll move it.
sorry, Councillor Arthur is
Recommendation as
moving
written.
it. Is there a seconder? Councillor Qualman is the seconder. But Councillor Arthur, you want to speak to the start or the end of it?
I think what Miles has put together is a fairly good summary of what happened at the workshop. And is the sort of thing that we need from our council's point of view. I congratulate him on how he's put it together.
Thank you. Councillor Coleman, you're reserving your position at this stage?
Thank you, Mr. with councillor Arthur and support and all encompassing and something we got to be mindful of and good.
Oh, Councillor Roundtree, you've had a question or a position or a...
Probably a bit of both. I agree. I think this is look, I thank Miles for taking into consideration all our comments. I thought it was a good debate we had on the subjects. I just needed some clarification because I wasn't sure. Are we suggesting that the words human induced is remaining in? Are we supporting that as a council, that we're saying that this is human induced and we're still happy with the words urgent, ambitious and immediate action? Because the way I read it is that was going to stay in, and I just think that they are alarmist words and not actually even in line with the NFF position. And that the NFF position is probably the area where we should be adopting, doing the same thing. So I just wanted some clarification around, are we supporting the inclusion of those words? Is my first bit.
Thank you, Councillor Roundtree. The way I've drafted this is that you neither are expressing that you don't support nor that you support the policy statement as it stands. So what I read was that there were a number of different views. So there's a range of views within the chamber. So I didn't feel I could land either way definitively. So I settled on the strong expression of concerns. Now, obviously there's the ability to amend that should the chamber decide to do so.
Thank you for that clarification. The other area was a comment. It says a key question to consider is whether the declaration of an emergency has any material impact on the CDC. I think that was on page 53. And whilst there is probably not much there that compels the CDC to do a particular thing, I think what the last 2 years have shown us is that governments can compel people to do certain things if they decide that there's an emergency and it needs to happen. And I just think and I think you've sort of said it, we actually need a lot more clarification around what the implications for our region could be should something more drastic happen, and we need to get a bit more clarification around that. And I talk about this because I had spent some time reading PIRS's document on climate change, and they were quite negative about sheep and cows and their emissions. And I just think, gosh, we are that region, and that if that became into policy somewhere, then that could cause us some problems down the line. So I'm happy with what you've put together. It's just a really tricky area from my perspective. Thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor. So similarly, my reaction to the word emergency is to run in the other direction, because something which is imposed as an emergency by a city-centric organisation can have far-reaching ramifications on our agricultural industry. But I thank Miles for putting together a real comprehensive recommendation, which does encompass pretty much most of what was said during the workshop. Obviously, there's an awful lot of work to be done for rural areas when you consider the amount of truck movements we have going through our district and the amount of truck movements we have just through our farmers. And it's going to be no small task to move those trucks to an alternative energy or to low emission vehicles. But I don't want us to drag our heels on it, but it's a matter of, it's all well and good to say that we want emissions to drop by 2030 or 2050 or whatever it is, but it's just around the corner. So at the moment, we just, this is a good start. But I think we need to keep going and keep pressure on as well to make sure that our district is looked after, especially our farmers, as we've just stated, Councillor Arthur stated, 70% of our rates of income is coming from primary production. So we've got to, 70% is a huge proportion of our district.
Thank you, councillor.
Firstly, I apologise for not being able to be at the workshop to hear all of the discussion. And so I'm still playing catch up. Was there any discussion, and being someone who does live near the lakes and Coorong, etc., on the water-based areas? I'm hearing basically a lot around the farming, which I agree with. But if climate change, or I won't say if, because I do believe climate change is an issue, but we have issues around that. Are we looking at inundation problems that we are going to have if we sit on our hands here? Was any of that discussed? And I guess I am not finding it clear in the recommendation, so I'm a little uncertain about how important we felt that was for both, not only us, but anyone on both sides of the lakes and river. Coorong.
So Councillor Bennett can answer that. Certainly there was discussed, and Councillor Lang spoke considerably about, again, the barrages and sea level rises. And it was spoken somewhat in relationship again to the emergency declaration and whether that really is as valid as direct, clear action. So again, it probably harks back to what we were talking about earlier with the presentation. About what action is being taken. So yes, it was discussed, but it was discussed in relationship to.
So my follow-up question on that then, if I might, that if you have an emergency declaration, one would assume then you will have an action following it. So chicken and egg.
I wouldn't actually make that assumption.
It would be nice.
The state parliament has made that declaration last month, and consequently, they've been criticised for some of their immediate decisions. So, look, I'm only reflecting what was said in that workshop, and the workshop did spend a fair bit of time considering what's more important for this council and members, and they're certainly, focused again on action, what's really happening, and I think in that third dot point, that's where I've reflected the workshop conversation.
I guess from my perspective, there needs some more clarity around that we are a very diverse area, and as a council, I don't think yet this reflects that. So I will not vote.
Councillor Yench.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe that the statement is very good from the point of where the discussion went at our workshop. But I do disagree with a lot of it. I concur with Councillor Bland. I did confirm that Alexandrina Council and Murray Bridge have both declared climate emergency aspects in regards what they are dealing with. And in both counts, they have significant land that has inundation risk with the lakes. We by far have more. The barrages, as we did discuss on the day, are a weak point for us. But I totally acknowledge we are a regional rural council, and we have to have and acknowledge the needs of those ratepayers. But we're also a very complicated council because we are a coastal council with needs and responsibilities. And I don't believe this goes strong enough for the southern end of our council area. I think we are very definitely focused on what is in the northern end. And their concerns and issues are legitimate. At the southern end, the water issues are for them. The barrages, as we were told today, will have problems with high tides for the next 2 months. As we were told today, sea rise is occurring. To what extent? None of us are able to give clarity, and we're not. But I do believe that the council, as a regional and a rural council, as we are a coastal council, needs to get on board with the terminology. We need to be more aligned with our neighbouring councils rather than the hysteria of city communities. But again, what was said very clearly today is that the barrages aren't the only infrastructure that is facing a potential catastrophic problem. All coastal councils will be facing this. So we need to have a foot in each camp. We need to acknowledge that both camps are relevant, but I do not believe we have acknowledged the water and the lakes issues as relevant enough, because the lakes and the water issues are Adelaide's and this state's security. If these things are breached without us at least putting on a turn in advance, we will have to accept obviously what we do. I will be voting against this.
Anyone else would speak for or against, Councillor Hill?
I will also be not voting for this. I have seen some very innovative and very clever carbon sequestering and climate change mitigation strategies being adopted by many farming businesses around the nation. I don't think a statement that we make will change one iota what is already happening out there in the farming community and food production community. They're already adopting things and moving forward regardless of us freeze and play. The council mainly has to look at itself in terms of what we are going to do to help with the changes, and market forces will do the rest. So I don't think what we say on a page will make much difference whatsoever, except to acknowledge that there has been anthropogenic climate changing, and that we acknowledge that there are communities that will need help with perhaps adopting some activities, which we do with things like LAP and other council activities. So yes, I won't be voting for this.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak for or against? Councillor Arthur, you've got a twitch, or is that your finger?
Sorry. I'll just thank Miles again. And I think what we've got to realise is an overarching LGA climate change policy statement. It doesn't get into individual areas, individual places. And one of the things that it's always been brought up as a climate emergency. Some councils have passed that. I wonder, in a democracy, if they went out to the actual ratepayers and asked them, or is it there's just their own personal view? And before a climate change, if we were going to put out a specific agenda on climate change, it should go to the ratepayers for their decision, not elected members. And I'll close debate.
No. So you have closed debate, councillor. I think that's your unspoken anyway. The recommendation is as it reads, councillors. I put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? The motion will be carried. Just a second. Those voting for the recommendation and the motion was councillors Arthur, Qualman, Taylor, Roundtree and Simmons. Those voting against, councillors Hill, Bland, Lang and Yench. Motion remains carried. Thank you. Number 3, section 41 committees review progress report number 1. There's a recommendation there, councillors. Councillor Bland, are you moving? Councillor Ling, I'm going to take you as a seconder. Either you want to speak?
I think it's well set out document. We asked for this review some time ago and I'm very pleased to see it moving forward. Well done.
Similar. I was a bit shocked when I first read the recommendation with the Canalpin Community Hall, but as discussed, it's good. I like what's going.
Councillor Roundtree.
Yes, I just wanted to say that, look, with the Canalpin Community Hall, their biggest concerns were around having a voice and having their concerns heard. And I think the Miles and Ben, who attended the meeting, certainly went to great lengths to assure them that this new system, if it comes in, would actually help them. It wasn't going to be a detriment. They were still going to be heard, that the CRM system that we have in place is and how it worked, and it would, be there for them in the future. And it gave them some comfort, but they were of the view that it might be easier for council to make the decision. They still weren't, I think, 100% sure that this was the right way, but really their main concern was around just being heard and having their issues picked up and dealt with in a timely manner. And I think if we can achieve that through the CRM system, then that's going to be a very helpful thing.
Councillor. Anyone else? Councillor Qualman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, this recommendation makes sense with the relevant information with the about excluding the Canalpin Community Hall Committee. The others haven't met for the whole term of council. And I did have concerns over the Canalpin Community Hall by reading through and listening to Councillor Roundtree. The CRM system will probably air their concerns or help them with their concerns and getting things done. So I'll support the motion.
Thank you. Anyone else? Closing, councillor. With the motion, it is as it reads in the agenda. All those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Item 4, intention to grant lease to the State Emergency Service for their station or their building at Meningie. Councillor Taylor, you've got a question or you're moving that way?
Moving.
Councillor Taylor's moving that way. Is there a seconder? Councillor Bland, I'm going to take. Councillor Taylor, you wish to speak?
No.
Councillor Bland?
No, it would have been nice eventually if SES had moved to CFS area, but it hasn't happened, so we keep going.
Yes. Anyone else? Closing, councillor, you're done.
Close.
Put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Councillor Roundtree, I don't know if you can hear me. Are you in favour or against this one?
Yes, in favour.
Thank you. Carried unanimously. Coorong Growth Strategy Update number 5. There is the council receive the updated summary of the growth strategy engagement process, and note that tomorrow evening at the generous with the lady in the old hall, or the hall at Wellington East, 5:30 to 7:30, there will be a further public consultation, I suppose, people who wish to attend, and then we'll move forward with this. But has anyone else got any questions around this? I'll move that way, please. Councillor Taylor and Ling. Great. No further discussion. Motion, all those in favour? Carried unanimously. Number 6, Adoption of the 2022-2023 budget. There is a recommendation there. Someone wish to move that way, please, or another way?
I'm happy to move that way.
Roundtree is moving. 6. The seconder. Councillor Taylor is the seconder. Councillor Roundtree, you wish to speak to it? She can hear me sometimes and now she's muted.
Oh, sorry. I thought I'd unmuted, but whatever. Anyway, I have read it. I feel like we've gone over it many times in previous meetings and workshops, and so I'm happy with it. I think we just get on with this now so that staff can get on with their jobs.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Taylor, you wish to speak now? Are you reserving?
No.
Anyone else wish to speak? The recommendation?
Just a minute.
Councillor Arthur?
Just one question, I suppose it's all to do with changing out the sealed roads and the unsealed roads on page 16. I thought we were putting more money in that in because it's got, the 21-22 budget, and then it's got the 22-23, $2.3 million for sealed, nothing for unsealed. Total 2.4, it's against 2 million. I thought we were putting about 600,000 extra into the unsealed roads this year. As there's no figure in here, how much are we actually allocating for the unsealed roads?
Where were you reading, Councillor Arthur?
Sorry,
Where are you reading?
page 16.
16 as in your iPad or 16 as in the paper copy?
Operating revenues and expenses.
The actual document.
Being rolled up. Matt, Bill, have you got a?
Note 8, operating revenue and expenses. Is that correct?
Yes, we are putting more money to it, Councillor. I'm
Right.
not sure what's going on there.
Yeah.
We've looked at this 7,000 times.
It's a transposition thing, is it?
No, Bill, have you got that on page 16?
The numbers at the bottom are right.
Come to the
Thank you, Bill.
for the
Yes.
next few minutes.
This is
Just pull
depreciation.
the mic towards you.
Just an overarching explanation that the document on page 16 is the depreciation schedule.
Not
For the purposes of depreciation, it may not answer the original question, but the purpose of the document isn't for revenue in summary.
Page 8, operating and revenues and expenses. Page 16 down here, and that, page 8 up here. So, note 8, sorry, note 8.
Yeah, note 8 is the depreciation schedule by class.
So go back to your original schedule of accounts, Councillor, and find where note 8 is, and you'll find that there'll be more information there. The notes are just information for you. So go back to page.
That's not correct, is it? You've got the sealed roads depreciation for last year, 990, this year, 2.3 million.
Is it
Overall, you might have juggled the figures to make it look all right, but yeah.
No, it's not juggling, Councillor, it's bottom
No,
line figures.
This also feeds back to what Miles was previously saying about the two systems and how it's reporting. But the bottom line is what we need to be looking at.
Thank you.
Depreciation in sealed roads is a combination of all roads. So the 2.352 is depreciation for our entire road network, which is a combination of the 1.199 for unsealed roads in 21-22 and the 990 from 22-23.
So you can see the one above it went up by 138% and the one below it went down by 100%. So it's just, again, it's the naming conventions.
So councillor, it appears that once again, in the conversion to the new system, we still have,
Yeah, because if you add up the movement, it's 2.5 million. But you got one off and one on, so that'll be adjusted. Okay.
next year will be a lot simpler.
A little bit confused.
Any other questions around this recommendation, councillors, this motion? To Roundtree, you'll close.
Closed.
Okay, so the six point, whatever it is, 1 is the adoption of the 22-23 budget. I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Those against, that's carried unanimously. Number 7, adoption of the 2022-23 valuation. Recommendation. There, councillors. Councillor Hill. Thank you. To a seconder. Councillor Yench. So the motion will read that the council pursuant to provisions of the Act, that council for rating purposes, the year ending 30th of June 2023, adopts the most recent Valuer General's capital valuations totaling, is that 2 billion or 2801,884,226? Is that
Correct.
8 billion. There you go. I was right. Councillor Taylor, you have a question?
Question, is any guidance documentation provided with the overall valuation? I saw the report that came out. But 25%, average of 25% is rather large.
Through you, Mayor. We do have, and I thought I set one out.
You did send out the overall
So
valuations.
overall, if you look at, and I have a breakup that we can also send out, like residential's up by 15.7, commercial shop up by 11.47, industry, light up by 14%. Every category is up. And so the average, and of course, the biggest up is the primary production up by 29%, nearly 30% actually, if you round it. And so the average is 25.58% overall.
Do we get any background information as to what is driving the increased valuations?
So I'll let
Apart from
Leanne
supply
talk,
and
but
demand.
And to come to it.
it's basically the buying and the selling of the houses.
You come
Yeah.
to a mic, please, Leanne, at some stage in relation to this.
Yeah, so through you, Mayor, the Valuer General uses the median price, so it's based on the sale of land, is how the valuations are determined.
Yeah, thank you. I realise that. However, do we get any other information? So, for example, do we know how much of the purchasing is from overseas investment, as an example?
No,
No, we don't get that.
However, I'll just say that in the growth strategy, we do go into a bit of a deeper dive in terms of demand and supply. So you will get some of that information. And there has been a fair bit of interstate buying of properties in South Australia. And even some international purchases as well, despite, there not being, much movement in terms of people into Australia because of COVID, but definitely the interstate movement has had a positive impact upon prices for property in our district.
So I'm just curious to know how much of it is not necessarily investment from yes, onshore investment, and how much of it is offshore investment, and
Yeah,
what that sort of will look like in future.
A mix of all of those and pure demand and supply. So we know that there has been a restriction in supply. So people have been willing to pay more for houses. And we've heard all these stories about exceeding the estimated auction valuations and exceeded by quite a percentage. So that has been common across the entire state. We're probably, mid to, the upper range in terms of those percentages. I think across the state, the lowest has been around about 10%, and that's been around the Iron Triangle and Wowler, those type of areas. But yeah, the 28% has been a fairly common figure across the state.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No more questions. Councillor Hill, you'll close.
Yes, I close.
Thank you. For the recommendation, all those in favour? Those against, that's carried unanimously. Number 8. This is council authorisation of rate rebates, and that is that the council adopts the rate rebates as referred to in the listing attached in respect of the budget. Councillor Qualman is the mover. For a seconder, Councillor Arthur.
Legislation, no debate.
There being none, yes.
I have a question, sorry.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Just can I have clarification what the Adelaide Benevolent Society is and Unity Housing Trust Company Limited?
Housing group. Community housing group.
The community housing groups, councillors.
Okay, thank you.
It's relatively public knowledge that the Adelaide Benevolent Society have a REFTA.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Close debate.
Thank you. I put the motion. All those in favour? Those against, that's carried unanimously. Number 9, the declaration of 22-23 differential rates and fixed charges. The recommendation, it's a long recommendation, councillors. Councillor Glenn. Thank you. You're a seconder. Councillor Taylor. Do anyone want to speak for and against the recommendation? There being no one, LeBland, you will close. The recommendation, it's a big recommendation. Councillors, all those in favour? Those against, carried unanimously. Number 10, the declaration of the 22-23 Community Wastewater Management Scheme service charges. Move that way, please. Councillor Lang. Councillor Taylor, you've got a question or you against it? What do you want to do?
No, I'd just like to point out, Madam, from the previous motion, page 74, there's a typo.
Page 74, typo, which number?
The table, so there's a table with years, comparison following table indicates changes in differential rate. The year, there's 2021s.
Yes. Third and fourth line.
So the fourth line from the top should be 2019-20s, but I would believe would be inaccurate.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think that'll be a fair correction. Back to my declaration of Councillor Lang as the mover on community wastewater schemes service charges. Is there a seconder? Councillor Roundtree is the, you got beaten, Councillor. Is the seconder. Is there any debate, discussion around that which is remaining the same as last year? There is none. Or put the motion, councillor.
Close, sorry.
All those in favour? Those against, that one's carried unanimously. Number 11, declaration of the 22-23 water supply systems service charges. Councillor Qualman is the mover. Councillor Hill, I'm taking as the seconder. Debate, discussion. Being none, you'll close,
I'll
councillor.
close, thank you, Mr Mayor.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Number 12, declaration of the curbside waste management charge. Move that way, please. Councillor Qualman. Is there a seconder? Councillor Roundtree. Pursuant to the regulations, a service charge of $337 be imposed on each eligible assessment on rateable or non-rateable land within the boundaries of the curbside collection areas. Council makes available a service. Any debate? Councillor Lang.
Question, if I may, Chair. Believe we are in the process of changing over service provider. How might this figure be changed in the next 12 months?
That's still in negotiations, councillor. It hasn't been finalised yet.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Closing, councillor.
I'll close the debate, thank you, Mr Mayor.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Number 13, the declaration of the regional landscape levy.
Mayor,
Question from councillor Lang to start with.
could we separate these two different landscape areas for discussion and debate? It always comes up.
Councillor, I don't think we get to determine them at all.
We can put them as two separate reports. At the end of the day, councillor Lang, it's money in, money out, and
Yeah.
we have no discretion over them.
I understand we're given instructions on how it will be. Looking at the rates officer, we just instructed on the amount of revenue to raise and, yeah,
Yep, okay.
but perhaps not, councillor. Do you want to move that way anyway?
No,
Someone else move the recommendation, please. Confirmed land. Is there any discussion around that, councillors? It's the only one I'm not looking at, sorry. Councillor Roundtree.
Just a question, is there ever going to be an opportunity in the future for both the Limestone Coast and Murraylands Riverland boards to actually agree on how they're going to charge the fee so that it isn't two different methods?
We don't charge. They do.
Yeah, but I mean,
The councillor,
will that ever,
as was mentioned by the CEO today of the Murraylands board, we're one of 3 councils in the state that's in this unfortunate position of having a boundary through the middle of our council, and now I think falls generally on deaf ears. And I think in my term here, we've made attempts to lobby the ministers and to no avail. I think unfortunately we're saddled with it.
okay,
What local government all would love to have is the state government collect the levy in another way instead of us, but there seems to be no movement from the last minister anyway. Got the
well, it
next
makes
minister.
no sense to you, Mayor, that they have two different systems, it's crazy.
Well, it makes sense to them. But we just saddled with it.
Yeah.
Any further debate? There's none. Councillor Arthur, you're closing.
Just one brief question to the CEO. It was mentioned today by the CEO of the Maryland home, what do they call it now? Landscape board. That council gets a small fee for doing it. I thought that council never got anything for doing it.
We do, and it is a small fee, it's really for the administration of it. And I don't think we're going to retire on it, councillor, but I don't know what it is off the top of my head.
Going to retire on it.
Yeah, it's $2,480 and then you get a certain fee, it's about $1.10 or something versus
Okay.
We received nearly $2,480 as a collection agency and $1.10 per assessment. So we don't actually do it for nothing, but
Not bad.
we're not far from it.
Closed.
Closed, thank you. I put the motion. All those in favour? Those against it, that's carried unanimously. Number 14, the payment of rates for the 2022-2023 financial year. And it recommends that rates are payable in 4 equal instalments or approximately equal, with such instalments being due on the 5th of September, 5th of December, 6th of March in 2023, and 5th of June in
I'll move
2023.
that.
Councillor Hill, thank you. Is moving that way. There a seconder, Councillor Bland, I believe. You have anyone to speak to that? No. Is there any further debate around this subject? There being none,
Those,
put the motion. All those in favour? Those against, that's carried unanimously. Item 15, 2022-23 rate capping. There's a motion there about rate capping, councillors. Someone wish to move? Councillor Lang. Councillor Yent. Seconder. Any debate around the recommendation? That's pursuant of the Local Government Act. Council will fix a maximum increase in the general rate to be charged on rateable land, including properties in the bulk handling zone, in the amount by which the general rate payable exceeds the 2021-22 general rate payable by more than 10%. And such a cap will not apply. The property has been acquired by the ratepayer after 30th of June 22. The increases in general rates is payable due to whole or in part to an increase in the value of the property attributable to improvements, or that the increase in general rates payable is due in whole or in part to an increase in the valuation of the property attributable to a change in the zoning of the land under the Development Act. We make a budget provision line for people to request this. Anyone wish to speak for or against this?
I have a question.
Yes, Councillor Roundtree.
Thank you, Mayor. Can we get an example of what situations would allow a person to claim the 10% threshold? So if it can't be because your zone has changed or that your value has increased, what's an example and how would someone calculate that?
To you, Mayor, and correct me if I'm, the valuation increase has to be because of improvements to the land. So the example is if you build a new shed, the valuation goes up. But if it's just a straight out valuation increase, like Councillor Taylor asked before, and there's been no change to improvements on the land, then you're eligible. In the zoning area, I'm going to look to Miles, but again, it would have to be a specific act to change the zoning, to change the increase in the valuation, which would make you ineligible.
Correct. And look, I'll just ask for the Development Act 1993 to be replaced by the Planning Development and Infrastructure Act 2016.
Yes.
I'll just note that slight amendment in the last line, taking away the Development Act 1993 to the PD, Land Development and Infrastructure Act 2016. Agreed. Also, note the number of applications approved and the rates foregone in previous years on the agenda. Any further debate?
Opposed.
Thank you, councillor. Motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Yeah,
When you're ready.
yeah. I think we're at the point we can thank Bill and Leanne very much for your work and falling off the chair, Leanne? I'm not quite sure, or happy? I don't. Once again, I know it's a very large achievement to actually get the budget, all its processes adopted. So I thank you all again, council. Yes. Item, where are we? Oh, 16. Recommendation that council adopts the schedule of fees and charges. Councillor Arthur.
I'll move as presented with the amendment, which Ashley has got, and I'll read it out to you. Waste transfer stations. Disposal fees be paid by volume if you segregate your load into rubbish to go into bulk bin and sort and drop recyclables in bins provided you pay. Hang on. This is the one I messed up. And you will only pay for the load which goes into bulk bin. For example, half trailer to bulk bin, half trailer to recyclable bins, you only pay half charge for that size trailer. The second part of the amendment is that the charge for green waste be deferred until a business case for the charge has been presented to the elected members.
Councillor Qualman, you're the seconder of that.
I certainly am. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Have you presented that to the, so we probably need that on the table so we can discuss that. Councillor Taylor, though, you your hand up.
So I'm going to support that. First I've heard of it, but one of the things that really has bothered me since the fees and charges were presented, no disrespect to Matt for doing all of the hard work for this, is the green waste charge. So the we as a council surely are encouraging responsible recycling, even though it is a cost to council. I would like to still encourage that green waste be transported in a sensible manner to the waste transfer facilities, rather than encouraging people to try and dispose of it themselves or whatever may happen as a result of the introduction of green waste charging.
I'm just awaiting proposal different to the schedule of fees and charges. Should be on the screen. Could anyone tell me what effect this will have on the budget? Please.
Matt, to make sure that I've got the right amount. So we're talking about a surplus, councillors, of $12,000. That's a very skinny year next year. And I appreciate that green waste, we should be encouraging it, but costs about $40,000 a year to process our green waste now. So that surplus has disappeared. I'm just saying it's not something, and we can look and make sure that we can accommodate that, but I just need to bring that to your attention.
Councillor Qualman is the next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Everybody, that's why I asked this question early in the meeting, is that so we can get some figures to see how much more expense was going to be incurred on council. However, I don't think us ratepayers, the ratepayers should be paying anything for the green waste. And I throw their arms up in the air and protest. I can see that now. And it's also going to encourage, unfortunately, people do some illegal dumping, but also probably encouraging, which we don't want, is people burning in their backyards in the township. I can't see why council can't use some of its vacant land to dump what is burnable material and get the CFS to burn that, and that wouldn't be any cost, virtually none to council, and the green bin system would take care of the green cuttings from the lawns. So I'm totally against these new charges on green waste, and that's something maybe council could do. Thank you.
Question? Would council consider the purchase of something like a chipping machine or something which, so I understand that we hired that in, didn't we?
Matt, at the moment, the stuff that goes to the 4 disposal stations is chipped in situ. That's chipped in situ, and the economics of us owning a machine would be
The resources of staff. We can look at that, Mayor.
we can look at that, councillor, as in part of this review of the charges. It's probably not the chipper that you just see on the side of the road working for the power authorities.
Yeah, no, I've seen the big one at the West Transfer Station.
I'd like to speak to this to start with, Mr. Mayor.
Just give me a second, because I think we're very close having the words on the screen. What's that over there?
Read it out, councillor.
I think the wording, not too bad.
50%.
My wording's better than yours.
Councillor Arthur, if we put 50% rather than half, does that?
Oh, yeah.
Based on like a pro rata proportion.
Yeah. So just about it's 30-70. That's what 3 other councils do, I know of.
Matt, excuse me, Mayor. Does that make sense? We can use it.
It creates a discussion or debate between the attendant and the customer, which is part of what we're trying to avoid, but we'll manage it.
I think, councillors, that what you see can be interpreted fairly clearly. It's about segregated loads in the first one. We acknowledge that may have some difficulties with some people claiming a percentage or the full load or half load. But at this stage, if motion was to get up, well, we'll just have to trial that. The second part is that the green waste fees be deferred until a business case. And you've been informed of the potential additional cost to council of if this motion was to be successful.
I just asked the question, what would be the additional cost?
It's not additional, through you, Mayor, sorry, it's not additional cost. We currently, it costs us, or as an organisation, around $40,000 a year to process green waste. It's not a free, it's not a free, just because somebody dumps it at the resource centre or wherever, it's not free in terms of processing.
Never has been.
No.
And that's part of the conversation that should have been had. my opinion, of elected members for the staff brought that charge forward. Because at the workshop, we were told there's no change to what we do now. So that the green waste will be processed at Canalpin, Tinanara and Meningie and transported to Tailem Bend. So that as far as an increase in cost, there may be a small transport cost increase, but not. As far as my motion regarding the segregation of loads, I believe that will probably in the long run save us money because it'll put a lot less into the rubbish. At the present moment, if you send a trailer out there, you pay for it, so all goes in the rubbish. At the present moment, why would you separate it into your recyclables? The rubbish goes and we pay per tonne for it. The recyclables go, but we also can get a rebate from the recycling setup that the government said. I think it was $600 last year off the top of my head. So when we also set an example that we are serious about recycling.
I don't know if that was your closing argument, councillor. I'm going to give any other councillors a chance, though. That went on into a statement. There was no other councillors wish to speak. Yes. I'm going to take that as you've closed debate.
Closed debate.
And is closed with the recommendation on the screen, which makes that amendment to the original recommendation. I put the motion. All those in favour? Those against, so that is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Thank you for that. Item 12, infrastructure and assets. There is no report. Item 13, petitions. I have nil.
Mr. Mayor, could, in that infrastructure and assets report, there was an email saying that we might have an overrun on a particular job that we are looking at, where the quote was considerably more than had been budgeted for.
We're still working on that. We weren't ready for that. But you're talking about a briefing we had scheduled for this today?
Right.
Yeah, we're not ready. We're still looking at options.
Okay, thank you.
Item 13, petitions. There is nil. Item 14, deputations. As far as I know, there is none. Item 14.1, public question time. I've had none, Ashley. None in person or in writing. We move to item 15, information document. Councillors, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor. Page 4. Barkuma Road upgrade. Initial analysis of the tenders submitted for the delivery of Carcoma Road indicate capital cost to deliver the scope of work 40% over budget. Any comments?
That's the what Councillor Arthur was alluding to. We are still working through that to see what the options are. But the quotes have come back in a much broader range than we expected and higher than we expected.
Councillor Corman, then Councillor Roundtree.
Two, please, Mr. Mayor. First one is page 5. The Wellington East Reserve. There's a bit of a overrun, not in money, but overrun in time for the constructions of the toilet. Through the chair to the DRA, could you please explain if they're on time or there's a bit of a hold up, please?
Yeah. The toilets and the structures are delayed due to supply. As soon as they arrive, they'll be installed. I'm not sure of the time.
Thank you. Next one is page 7. Curb and gutter replacement on Tiller Street. Just wondering, through the chair to the DRA, that what was the cause of the old curbing? Was that trees or age or what? What was the cause they had for replacement?
Through the chair is a combination of both trees and age. And with the lack of grade, any minor alterations or discrepancies in the curb grade due to tree root intrusion causes water to hold.
And if I may continue with my question, was the appropriate arborist and appropriate action taken regarding tree roots and problems and removal of any problem trees so we don't incur any more problems with this regarding our curbing?
While there's trees on roads as street trees, there will always be root intrusion, and it's a matter of doing remedial work on isolated and localised failures due to tree root intrusion. That will always happen.
Mr. Mayor, it's a very narrow footpath and curbing not far from the boundary, so I know it's restricted by room, but I just thought I'd bring up that concern. I don't want to see our curbing deteriorate quicker than what it should. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Roundtree.
Thank you, Mayor. So my questions was around how will future R&M items for halls and places like that be presented to elected members when they're no longer Section 41 committees?
CRMs, I think you're referring to.
Yeah, so once there's a list of things that the hall needs or whatever anyone needs, how will we sort of be kept abreast of that, or will we need to be kept abreast of it? Maybe we won't.
Any request, and it pretty much happens now for most of those halls. If there's maintenance work to be done, it comes to a CRM and then it's flagged to the most appropriate officer. The reporting to that degree won't come through council then, unless it's a major work, which we would then bring to you because it would be a capital expense.
Okay, thank you. And my last question was the list of roads that have been graded. Can we have the towns listed against those roads as well for people like me who don't know what all those roads are? So it'd just be useful to see what the towns as well.
We don't have towns against it.
Councillor, a fair few of those roads don't have towns or would have two towns. I think perhaps you get to the staff.
Well, some do.
They can give you a map showing you every road and every name. Might be more appropriate.
Google Maps.
Could have Google Maps.
The rat map, as it's called.
Well, every month I send in a request to get the roads for Canalpin, and I get it quite easily. It seems to be that they obviously have the information. I can get it quite easily. I just thought it would be more useful to have it in the report so everyone can see it than just me. But I'm happy to keep doing it the way I'm doing it.
The report you get is about the ward and the roads, not so much the town that's associated with. Some of these go between two towns, Minigi and Tintinara, and it would be very difficult.
Okay.
Other questions out of the information document? Councillor Bland.
Yes, I'm going to ask about the skate park. Where are we at?
Councillor, you can answer a certain amount.
I can to a degree. Through the chair, we're anticipating a growing assessment panel meeting on July the 3rd. And from that, depending on the decision they make, that's as much as I can tell you. It's a notification.
So should it be successful going forward? Fundraising committees and
Through the chair, once the application is presumed that it is approval is granted, we can't preempt that, but then we would have to renegotiate with the contractor, re-engage them to come to site. So that timing is dependent on the outcome of the CAP meeting, or development assessment panel meeting on the 7th.
Councillor Deputy. Councillor Anderson.
I vote on that one, but we do have the primary question.
Fees for some reasons.
Not for that meeting.
Not for that meeting by the sound of it, councillor, you might have got out of that one. Okay. Any other information out of the information document people want clarification on? Thanking people for no. Councillor, I'm not far from the finish. Item 16, which is confidential items. So for those watching the live stream, please be advised the meeting is about to move into confidence and the live stream will stop. For those who wish to view the end of the meeting, the video will be available on YouTube after today's meeting.